Good evening, everyone. Lovely to see all your smiling faces. It is 6 p.m., and so I will call to order the McMinnville City Council work session of December 12th, 2023, and ask our Parks and Rec Director, Susan Muir, to introduce our topic this evening.
Before Susan starts, I just wanted to state for the record that the name on, or the agenda title printed was incorrect, and it's actually supposed to say Park Maintenance Level of Service, but everything included in the packet is correct.
Okay, off and running. I'm Susan Muir, the Parks and Recreation Director. You have a combination of city staff in front of you tonight to present this agenda item. This is a follow-up to the work session and Joint Planning Commission City Council meeting that we had on September 20th. At that meeting, we presented the 7 goals that we were developing under the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan update. And one of those goals triggered a lot of questions about park maintenance and how we do what we do, and just digging into a little bit about how we can be, what we're doing, how we do it, and what the plan is for the future. So at this point, we'll have the parks maintenance staff walk you through some of that. And John, I'll give the outline of the presentation if we're good to go, let you all know what we're going to cover. So we're going to give you the context for the park system maintenance. We're also going to talk a little bit more about that PROS plan development and the maintenance needs that we're seeing come out of that. We're going to give a current maintenance overview of how we do what we do. And we're going to talk about maintenance efficiencies, those that we're currently underway and some that are currently in concept, and then also leave time for questions and discussion. So before I turn it over to David, I just wanted to give you a little bit of context here. There's been a lot of internal conversation about park maintenance over the last several years, and recognizing some of the things that we as staff see what the public is telling us through the PROS plan. We know that a clean and safe park system is really important. We know that parks became more important through the pandemic, and people were spending more time outside. So all of these things have been a part of our internal conversations. In addition to that, we have a foundation in the 1999 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan that built a foundation for us to think about how we manage maintenance and what kind of standards we wanted to have. We're also going through all these conversations as a community about growth and our urban growth boundary and how we plan for future park needs and really the ideal park system that we want. We also talk about it through the lens of MacTown 2032 and city government capacity and how we can look at our core services. We also, you probably remember last year, had an ad package. That was phase 1 of what we considered to be a 3-phase plan to get to where we thought we needed to be. And we're going to lay some of the groundwork for upcoming additional conversations through the budget. We also have the conversation recently about dollars and cents. So we look at all of these things when we bring recommendations forward to you. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the current PROS plan update process. These are all the kinds of things that we talk about internally to figure out how we should administer the park maintenance program. You may notice that there's a lot of different departments represented here. It's funny when you think about the Parks Department, we get called that a lot just as a city, and we sort it out on this side, but there are really multiple departments that make up the Parks Department. There's Parks and Recreation Department, and we do the programming and the park development. And then there's the Public Works Department, and they do the parks maintenance, and their staff is going to be talking to you today. And even sometimes the Police Department will be a part of the conversation, and you may recall probably a little bit over a year ago, the chief and I came to talk to you about safe and clean parks at that time as well, and we really talked about the 3 components that we think need to be involved in creating clean and safe parks, which is good programming, using our parks and getting more people in our parks, good maintenance, and also then the safety and enforcement aspect of it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David and Liz to introduce themselves and walk you through the PowerPoint.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here. I'm David Renshaw, I'm the Public Works Operations Superintendent. On my right is Liz Lazar. She's our park maintenance supervisor. Liz has been with the city, pretty well came the same year, didn't we?
18 years.
So, and she's gone up through the ranks. She's been a seasonal, she's been a utility worker, she's a lead senior utility worker, and for the last couple of years, she's been our park maintenance supervisor. So I think what we're going to do is step through. John's going to lead us in the beginning, and then Liz and I will fill in, kind of ham and egg it through the deal. And if you have any questions, please let us know, and we'll try to save some time at the end. You're up,
Great.
John.
Thanks, David. Thanks, David and Susan. Good evening, everyone. Members of the council, mayor, my name is John Phoenix. I'm a principal and planner with MIG. We're helping the city of McMinnville develop the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Plan. And I just have a couple of refresher slides building on Susan's kind of overview of what we'll be talking about tonight. You've seen a lot of this information, so it's a little bit of a repeat, but we thought it would be helpful to set the context. So we're currently developing the plan. We've done a lot of community outreach, and I wanted to highlight this particular slide that shows survey respondents from our first online survey. And this was a map-based survey, so we asked, what would you change? What are some key needs when you think about parks, trails, and open space? And you can see the chart on the right showing responses by category, and then the location of those responses to a specific place in McMinnville. So there were needs shown from throughout the city in almost every park, but you can see the top need on the chart to the right is, top couple of needs: making it safer, cleaning things up, and fixing things that are broken. So all of those have a lot to do with park maintenance. We've also been hearing a lot about how great the existing system is. There's a lot that's working well. People love parks. Susan mentioned just how much parks played a role in the pandemic, people being forced to isolate and be outside. So we truly know how important they are, but there is a need for something more. And this isn't to say that every park in McMinnville should look like these two slides, but there are certain places, community parks, places that are kind of the showcase of what McMinnville has to offer. So places like City Park, for example, or Discovery Meadows, that they get a lot of use. There's a lot of great things to do there, so you're bringing in a lot of people. But over time, there's a lot more maintenance that's needed. I think there's, from what we've been hearing, more expectation that if you're going to have more people, if you're going to have more unique things, more specialized facilities, such as a spray grounds or a splash pad, that's going to require more specialized maintenance, and that includes both one-time and year-round maintenance needs. So again, these are just some refreshers that we've shown before, but earlier on in the process, we looked at comparable park and recreation providers, so communities of a similar size within the region, and looked at budget. So how much are comparable communities and the city of McMinnville spending per average on park maintenance? So you can see the comparable communities. Current budget is about 1.5 million to spend on maintenance, and that's inclusive of that excludes, major capital costs. So this is just maintenance. And when you combine that with total acres maintained, 358 park acres, we have a ratio of cost per acre, which is a helpful comparison, especially when you look at this figure. So you can see the average of the communities that we were examining is about 5,800 per acre. That's, again, an average cost. And you can see there, average costs all over the map, including McMinnville, that's a little bit below average at 4,100 per acre. So again, a helpful comparison to kind of see where things go. And this will tee up the conversation that David and Liz will present in just a minute. Another way of looking at maintenance needs and maintenance costs and expenditures is staffing. You hear a lot about that. We've been hearing a lot about that through the planning process. So here's another example, another way we looked at current costs and full-time employees, that's the FTE, and comparing that across these comparable jurisdictions. So currently, the full-time equivalent maintenance staff is 9, and David will have a slide on this in a little bit. And again, looking at the total maintained park system, 358 acres, that comes out to about 39.8 maintained acres per employee. So again, another helpful way to kind of see how we're doing with community needs for park maintenance, and you can see where the comparison is. So in this case, pretty close to the average. So you can see that there's a slightly higher ratio. So essentially what this is telling us is there's more per staff to do than the average comparison that we're seeing here. So with that, I believe the last time we met with council, we had a joint meeting with Planning Commission. We proposed some potential policies, some draft policies, and 2 of which I wanted to highlight here to set us up for the conversation tonight. One being an increase in that ratio that we just looked at for the cost to maintain the system per acre. So the average cost to maintain maintained acres. And the recommendation is an increase to $5,000 per acre per year, again, an average target, which represents roughly a 21% increase from the current average. So that's one policy for consideration. And the second, again, to go with maintaining parks, making sure we're following the right target, keeping up with deferred maintenance in a growing system, is to increase that other number that we just looked at of the full-time equivalent staffing to 32.5 maintained acres per staff. So that's a slight increase, and again, David will go into a little bit more details in just a minute. But both, in talking with staff and hearing from the community, both would be necessary to meet, that higher standard that we've been hearing about to keep up with the system and all the maintenance needs that David's going to go over next. So David and Liz, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Okay, so our first slide, and John, if you could go to the next slide. So this tells us a little bit about kind of who we are in the city. We're a division of Public Works. Most folks know we're out there next to the dog park. We like to think the dog park's next to us, but I guess it doesn't matter how you look at it. We have 9 field FTEs, and that's a little different number than you'll see in your budget. Most metrics, when you look at FTEs related to acreage, are the unit of measures of field staff. So in other words, it's not people like me. It's people like Liz that actually do the work. So our group consists of a supervisor, we have a senior utility worker, 4 utility worker 2s, 2 utility worker 1s, and then we have a seasonal FTE of 1.0, which generally equates to about 3 bodies, and we keep those folks on staff in the spring and summer for that up to 6 months max. So that's kind of the body count we have. This is what we're trying to accomplish, and this isn't new to folks that you've seen this in the budget, but basically, we try to be mission oriented, and we want to have a clear understanding of what we're trying to do, and that's basically our mission, is providing clean, safe, and well-maintained parks. So anything we do outside of that is outside of what we're trying to accomplish, and so we kind of try to keep the main thing the main thing. So on to the next one is. And this is on to Liz, and Liz is going to walk us through some of the specifics of actual tasks that we do and some of the challenges that her staff faces, and then it'll come back to me.
Good evening. So the work that we do can pretty much broadly be broken into 4 categories. We have the planned maintenance, which is what we know is coming up. We can schedule it, we can predict it. We know we have to do that. Every year we start mowing in the spring. Every year we have to test our backflows. Those are the sorts of things that we can account for ahead of time. That accounts for probably about 50% of the time we spend doing work. Next we have demand maintenance, which is work that arises from unforeseen circumstances. A lot of this can be weather, misuse and abuse of the parks, equipment failure or system failures. And as we know, as our facilities and equipment start to age, those unpredicted failures happen a lot more often. So that ends up taking a lot more of your time. Our demand maintenance is probably about 30% of the time that we spend. Next, we have our program or event support work that we do. This is typically in conjunction with Parks and Rec. This is the work we do to support.
Excuse me a minute.
Sorry about that. The work we do to support Parks and Rec programming. This again is planned maintenance, scheduled stuff. We work really close with Parks and Maintenance to prep areas for events and programming that they're putting on. We also, that accounts for about 15% of the time that we spend working in the parks. And then the last 5% is emergency operations. This is also can go into the demand maintenance area, but this is work that arises from bigger events that affect the city as a whole. So in any sort of weather event or other kind of event where we have to prepare for things, we join with street maintenance and collections, and we form a bigger crew that can then tackle whatever we're working on. And that's about 5% of our time.
So Liz, let me just interject something here. Kind of as an example of the impacts of demand versus planned maintenance, I'll use our fleet situation. If you were looking at us 2 or 3 years ago, our fleet maintenance demand versus plan was probably 50-50, whereas we were really fighting demand maintenance, things were falling apart. As we've improved the condition of our fleet, that demand maintenance has gone down, and that percentage of planned maintenance has gone up. So what that does is allows to project workload, and it also, you avoid downtime, and so people can be more productive. So that's just an example how it works in fleet. It's the same idea in parks as well. So, thanks.
So now we'll go into more of the details of what we actually do. So there is services that we perform on a daily basis in the parks. And this is primarily, we focus on keeping the parks clean and safe. And these are typically in high-use areas. Our staff will go to each park with a restroom every day. They'll sanitize and clean the restroom, pick up litter at the park, remove garbage, just do general upkeep, and then also either repair or remove small vandalism items, report any larger vandalism items so we can schedule those to be taken care of later. Then the parks without restrooms, so all our other neighborhood and community parks, we will visit on a weekly basis, pretty much typically between 1 and 3 times a week, depending on the level of use at those particular parks. And we do all the same things there except for the restroom cleaning, obviously. There's no restroom to clean. This work is often demand-oriented. If there is things that are risking sanitization or safety in any of these areas, we obviously have to react right then. And we've seen this work rise dramatically in the past few years. As you'll see in the little thought bubble there, in 2018, we were spending about 2,000 staff hours per year on these tasks. And just in 2022, we spent about 3,500. So that's a 72% increase. And a lot of that is demand work that we're having to react to immediately.
And one of the things I'll throw in real quick is we typically consider an FTE to be about a little under 1,800 hours a year. Most people work 2,080 hours a year, but with vacation, sick time, that sort of thing, the actual on the grade type availability is closer to about 85% of that.
So as a result of this increase in park misuse and abuse, we have entered into a contract with a private contractor, and they're providing private security services in the evenings or overnight for us. We started this in the spring of 2023, and our current scope of work includes them going to restrooms each night, ensuring that nobody's inside the restrooms, making sure they're locked before they leave. They also check covered patios, parking lots, other trouble areas that we've identified either by citizen complaints or by staff observations. And when they're in the parks, they will pretty much just request that individuals leave because the parks are closed. If they have to cooperate with the police department, they do that for circumstances where they need to. So we've actually seen a very significant reduction in the issues we were seeing before from misuse and vandalism and whatnot. So we have been very happy with this program so far. We're currently under consideration for a new contract with this contractor, and that will spread the scope a little more. We'll have a daytime officer that will be available for Parks and Rec programming and events during the months of June through August. It's kind of in that heavy season. And then they'll continue their year-round nightly checks. We've constructed that contract where it can contract or expand depending on the need. We can add hours, we can take away hours, we can add sites as needed, which we've already used some of that flexibility to kind of battle different issues coming up in different areas. Can I have the next slide, please? So just a little more detail on the demand work. This is work that can't be scheduled or predicted. It comes up and it needs to be done immediately. It's often the result of an event or misuse.
Is that Thompson?
That's
That's the answer.
That's the answer. Not too long after we put that, I think it was 2 years after.
2 years, yeah.
We put the play structure in. That's one of my favorite pictures of all time.
That's an amazing picture.
It was wonderful to clean up from.
It was not wonderful to clean up from.
Yeah. So work like this is often caused by weather, just other unpredictable events. I put some examples up there of the typical kind of demand work we see. It can result from floods, obviously, as seen in the picture, windstorms. We had an ice storm a few years ago that caused a lot of significant damage in the parks. User damage, vandalism damage. When you're dealing with people and weather, there can be a lot of unpredictable things that happen. And then this one is our significant maintenance programs. So these are all programs. This is our scheduled work that we can predict, and this is, yearly stuff that we do, seasonal stuff we do. And I'll just kind of go over them with a little detail of really what they entail. So we have the turf maintenance, which includes mowing in a variety of ways. We do everything from hand mowing to mowing with a 11-foot winged rotary mower. And then also fertilizing and pest control on our turf stands. We have horticultural maintenance, which is the pruning and maintenance of the shrubs. We take care of all the shrub beds in parks, obviously, but then also at the city buildings, most of the city-owned buildings, and then as well as public parking lots. Arboriculture. Let me try that again. Arboriculture.
Trees.
Nailed it.
Trees. We take care of thousands of trees across our parking lots, across our parks, and we have to do the regular maintenance of pruning them, be able to identify hazards when needed, know when to call in the arborists and the more professional people.
Do we have any tree inventory?
So each park has its own plan, and so we know what was planted at each park. We don't have a comprehensive one that shows everything, but it would be doable with a chunk of time.
Thank you.
And an arborist.
And an arborist.
So the plans identify species or?
Yes. Irrigation maintenance. So we have around 50 irrigation systems that we take care of. We do everything from startup, shutdown, programming, troubleshooting, repairs. We do the whole thing. Display beds. So these are the visible annual, perennial beds that you see at some parks, and then most of the city buildings we have them at. Trail maintenance includes primarily surface renewals to the trails, and then vegetation control. We depend a lot on volunteer time for this kind of work. Groups like to see a result really quick, and it's a fairly easy one to organize and stage materials for. So we use them a lot. Building maintenance, so park structures, we have restrooms and shelters. We do all the general upkeep as well as repairs on those. Have to keep them in working order. Integrated pest management. So this is your comprehensive program for applying any sort of pesticides or pest control. We have an intentional use of pesticides for weed control. We do turf pest control, mosquito control, tree pest control. So we have a lot that we have to manage pests with, and all of our utility twos, as well as myself, so 5 of us on staff, have pesticide applicators licenses. So we take continued education classes every year. Splash pad maintenance, our lovely splash pad. That takes up a lot of our time in the summer. I myself am very excited about the renovation because that'll save us a lot of time. We do, previously we've done daily chemistry tests, daily cleaning of filters, telemetry monitoring, troubleshooting and repairs, which troubleshooting was always fun on that one because nothing ever broke the same. It was always different, and we had to figure it out. Recreation program support, I kind of covered that a little. We prep spaces and events for sports and programming that Parks and Rec puts on. That requires extra visits to the parks to make sure everything you've prepped has not been messed up before the program starts. And it also involves scheduling your work so it doesn't scheduling our work so it doesn't interfere with those programs. We don't want to be at a park mowing while they're trying to read to kids. So,
I'll just jump here a minute. It's been over, and this is a situation I think has kind of evolved and gotten better, and particularly in the last 3 or 4 years. It's a lot of fun, which is a hard word for me to use, but it's a lot of fun to watch Katie and Liz, kind of the synergy coming off each other. Katie will come up with an idea, Liz will one-up her, and but it's fun to watch the two work together to get to the same place. And I think that's a significant enhancement of where we were maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, and it kind of builds on what Susan was talking about, that bridge between the two departments.
all right, and then we have natural area and riparian areas. We have a couple partnerships that we work with in this area. We work with the Greater Yamhill Watershed Council as well as Yamhill Soil and Water Conservation District. We do some applying for grants with them to help us maintain some of our undeveloped properties. Maintain's probably the wrong word. To try to get rid of noxious weeds and invasive species in those riparian areas and natural areas, and they do a lot for us. They're very helpful, and they're great to work with. Park amenity maintenance, all those fixtures in the park have to be taken care of, benches, tables, drinking fountains, sport courts. They all need some sort of preventative maintenance done as well as repairs. Then we've got park planning and development assistance. When we're putting in a new park, we are reviewing plans, we're coming up with specs, we're doing the actual construction inspections to make sure we're going to get a product that we can take care of afterwards. And then we've got a pretty robust play equipment maintenance program. We have the same 5 individuals that have the pesticide license also have certified playground inspector licenses. And so we can, we have an entire program where inspections are based on several things at each playground. So each playground has a different inspection interval. It all depends on the age of the playground, the material it's made out of, the level of use and also the level of vandalism. So some parks we go to every 2 weeks, like City Park, an older wood structure. We're going to go there every 2 weeks. And then a place like West Hills that's fairly low maintenance, we visit that one every 8 weeks. So just depending on the type of use those see. And then we do inspections, we keep the data on that, we schedule repairs based on that, and then we also have demand repairs, like a chain breaks and we have to go out and fix it right away.
Thanks, Liz. Any quick questions that you want to talk about, or you want to wait till the end?
Counselor Payne?
Thank you. I just had a question regarding the pest management. Is there anything that you all are doing to manage the rat population?
We, in terms, in the park system or in the sanitary system?
Say that again, sorry.
In the park system or in the sanitary system?
Parks.
Both.
Typically, if we're aware of a rat problem, we would take steps and probably hire some sort of pest control company, and deal with that. It's not something we deal with a lot of, so if that's an issue, maybe you could grab me after the meeting and point me in that direction. It's not a complaint I've heard in the park system, but.
You're welcome to come to my house. Be happy to show these boogers to you.
Counselor, that is not a benefit of your service. I'm sorry.
They are. We got some humdingers.
Oh, I'm sure we do, yeah, sure we do.
Thank you, David.
Yes, ma'am.
I do have a quick question for you, if I may, Mayor.
Please.
Thank you. So you said it was 3,485 hours that we're spending, and if I do my math right, that's 9.5 hours a day.
We have 2 staff members that are completely dedicated to that service. Obviously, they have days off, but yeah, so it probably averages out to about that. We do it 7 days a week. We do not skip holidays. We have staff in on the holidays just to go in and check restrooms and do garbage.
That's astounding. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's back to me. On the cost per acre metric that John had talked about, I wanted to emphasize that $5,000 an acre is not a requirement. It's a target. It's pretty typical in master plans to have some sort of target. You know, it gives you something to shoot for. Historically, we've not hit that target. Not right or wrong, we just haven't. I did want to point out in the slide there, that first number is incorrect, actually. That number should be, that number is more like $4,100. So basically, the numbers that we budgeted in 22, 23, and 23, 24 are virtually the same. So I apologize for that. That's a math error on my part.
That's all right. Before you go on, Counselor Chenoweth had a follow-up.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So on that first portion of conversation brought to us by John, he mentioned 2 policy recommendations. One was going to 5,000 an acre, and the other was increasing FTEs. Clarify for me, I assume if I'm paying more money per acre, I'm buying those FTEs when I'm paying for more per acre. So that sounds like the same policy objective being described in 2 different ways. What am I misunderstanding?
I don't think you are misunderstanding. Essentially what it would be is that in that $5,000 per acre, you would have that additional FTE.
I think the difference is how you are viewing and setting the standard from which you will move forward. Are you setting a standard based on employee level, or are you setting a standard based on investment per acre?
And so it's either or, not both.
Well, I'll defer to the.
I would see it as being coupled together. But, you know, for example, you could say, we're not going to invest in FTE and we're going to deliver that same $5,000 worth of service all with contractors, right? I mean, there's not a set way to do it. But the point is that they're just two different metrics to apply to the system.
Okay, so let me rephrase my question, what really I'm getting at. In other words, if we went forward with let's say we say both policy objectives we wanted to do, we're really looking at increasing from the 4139 to 5,000. That's really the bottom line dollar discussion we're having in this. Am I understanding?
If you chose to implement the $5,000 metric, yeah, I did the number.
That would also, as long as we say we want the FTEs, we'll get that within the $5,000.
Correct.
Thank you. That's what I'm after.
I'm not sure there's much else to say about this slide. I think Councilor Chenoweth kind of nailed it. I did want to point out that, back up a step there, John, if you wouldn't. You know, one of the questions that I know floats around in my mind is if you did that metric, you would push that budget figure to about 1.7, almost 1.8, so just to put it in real dollars. And so the interesting piece to me is that we're not that far away. You know, the gap is $350,000, $380,000, something like that. We've made some terrific progress in the last couple of years, and this three-phase core services approach that Susan referenced is going to get us there. Now, there's no law that says we have to be at 100%, but again, it's just a measuring stick. It gives us something to aim for. So anyway, thank you. Next slide. So along the same things, we're running 9 people, about 39 acres per FTE. What the gap would be based on this is about 2 FTE. Now, again, I want to emphasize there's 2 ways to tackle that. Or I mean 3 ways. You could do it with 2 full-time employees. You could do it with a whole seasonal group of 2 FTE, which is not ideal. You could do it with contractors. As we get a little further in this discussion and in the budget, we'll look at all 3 of those options to get us to that. Because what it boils down to is using those resources to get the work accomplished. And there's different ways to deliver those services. And we talk about that every year. I see Kelly nodding her head. She remembers about 20 of these discussions. Anyway, next slide, John. Okay, so these slides, we're going to talk a little bit about how can we get better at what we're doing. And so the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the concept of asset management and renewal. And again, I'll have a slide that talks to this, but one of the questions that's been floating around is how do we look at asset management and renewal? And basically what we do is almost every asset we own has a lifespan. And that lifespan typically is based on industry standards, institutional knowledge, what we see the thing doing. And then sometimes, for example, in the case of the facility assessment we did a couple of years ago, we'll bring someone in to actually assess it. But everything has a life, right? And that life can really vary even if it's the same type of asset. You know, on that list, if you're looking at a wood play structure, say in City Park versus metal play structures elsewhere, those are going to have different lives, different materials, different soil conditions, those sorts of things. And I won't bore you with the rest of them. But the idea is that not every asset's the same. Now, what we do is we pay attention, we track the asset's condition. For example, the skate walls at Dancer, we all know the coping stones are in trouble there. So that information is put in the general fund capital outlay spreadsheet every year, and those get funded as general fund resources allow. And of course, what has to happen there is those needs that we project in that spreadsheet have to be weighed in light of other general fund needs for the police department, for vehicles, for computers. So it's not surprising that not all of our needs are always funded, but that's how they're tracked. So next slide, John. So this is something we talk about quite a bit. This is basically the idea, really what asset management is built around. You'll see this same sort of curve for any kind of asset from pavement, to a truck. And the idea is over time, the condition of an asset gets worse. And the longer you wait and where you see the curve bump up, those are injects or interventions. The further you go down the curve, that difference is bigger because it costs more to get it back to where it was on the curve. And then so where the decision points come is where's that red line? Where in that life cycle on that asset are we going to interject? You know, if it's a roadway, when are we going to slurry it? If it's a vehicle, when are we going to put brakes on it? If it's a water feature, when are we going to renovate it, right? If it's a metal roof, when are we going to deal with those and replace it? Everything has a life. Right now, just because of the fiscal constraints we've been under, current model is run to failure. So it's a very reactive approach. Not right or wrong, it's just to what is. So next slide, please. So this is really kind of the core of where we're headed with the crux that we're headed with core services. The idea here is that when we talk about maintenance funding, it's really a 3-legged stool, right? Okay, there's a materials and services piece, there's a staffing element, and there's a capital outlay piece, the asset renewal piece. To have a balanced approach, we want injects or funding or balance funding in all 3 of those areas. You've thankfully, and we're grateful for it, you've made a great stride in addressing the materials and services leg. We did that last year. As part of the budget this year, we'll be bringing forward a summer package to deal with staffing. A year out, we'll bring forward a different package to deal with capital outlay. And just as a tickler for your brain, we're estimating, based on our understanding and assessment of where we are in backlog in terms of asset renewal, about a $300,000 need every year, and that's round figures. It won't be the same every year, but just to kind of set the stage for kind of where we're headed. So next slide, please. This is a little bit of information on relative efficiency. We utilize a computerized maintenance management system. Actually, I won't bore you with that piece, but we've used this since 2007, the same software since 2007. It's not been updated. Hansen is finally going to no longer support it, so we're in the process of updating it, working with IS to do that. In a nutshell, it's similar to any computerized maintenance management system. Assets are put into the system, maintenance routines are developed and scheduled, system generates work orders are assigned, someone goes out and does the work, then that work is captured in terms of hours, material costs, contractor costs, those sorts of things. And then using that data, you can do some tracking. You can track it against your maintenance target. We said we wanted to mow this many acres, or we said we wanted to fix this many pieces of play equipment, or we wanted to prune this many trees. But the real value of it is that you can then start projecting your workload, which then feeds back into how you're going to deliver services. Do we need more bodies? Do we need more contractor dollars? Some combination thereof. One of the nice things, when we update that system, it's going to allow for mobile device use in the field, so staff will be able to use phones or iPads or those sorts of things to actually get work orders and complete them. And then it will also have better mapping tools, so staff will be able to look and say, oh, that tree should be here, or that, more importantly, that valve should be here, and those sorts of things. And then reporting capabilities will have a much more robust ability for us to report back to you on what our progress is, and for us to monitor as well. I think we're on to you, John.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to show a couple of examples. You know, we're talking a lot about the operations side, administrative side, and I just thought it would be helpful to show a couple of examples of the design side. So how can we, be proactive about being more efficient with maintenance resources? And some examples here are really kind of a wide spectrum of different ideas that we're exploring with the park system plan, not all of which, might work for McMinnville or especially in every single park, but just a couple of examples. And each of these is not just financially, maintenance efficient. It's also better for the community. It's better for the environment. It's really a high performing, what we call LID, low impact development design. So it's meeting multiple objectives at the same time, including resource efficiencies. So on the far left, probably the most common that comes to mind, all of these have to do with water, and this is just one example of how we might be more efficient. Water and irrigation and water use is one of the most highly used resources in municipal systems. So thinking about what Liz showed us, all the different maintenance that goes into plantings and decorative plantings and so on. Thinking more about what we think about is water efficient or water-wise landscaping. And again, this isn't every park, this isn't across the board, but there are some areas that might work, even if it's a way to test out efficiencies in maintenance with landscape design. The one in the middle is an example up in Seattle, and this is green stormwater management. So the idea is not new. It's definitely taking on a lot of attraction for a lot of the similar reasons we're talking about tonight. Efficiency in design and really managing water so that we're not just piping it into another pipe to create more flooding downstream. We're managing water on site. And in doing so, thinking about benefits to the community, benefits to the environment. We've got an amazing green space that becomes a public space that's also functioning as stormwater management. And then a kind of an extreme example on the far right, I just kind of threw this in here for some fun. This is a splash pad spray park that incorporates recycled groundwater. Sounds kind of weird, but water is, this site is designed to collect water, so stormwater runoff. There's a collection of cisterns. They all go underground where it's filtered. There's a little bit of potable water that's added to that gray water, and then it's treated and recycled 6 times in the spray park before it's eventually released, and then it irrigates the rest of the landscaping in the park. So again, thinking about multiple benefits with efficiencies, but just some examples to consider with design.
Thanks, John. Just as a little factoid, actually a portion of West Hills Park, the easterly lower portion, is actually a stormwater detention pond. It's used as public open space, mowed, kept up, but actually functions as part of that system. So it's an idea we're already using a little bit. So when we think of efficiencies, I like to think of it as the idea of how do we get better, and B, how do we make sure that we can look our taxpayers in the eyes and say we're doing the best that we can with your resources. So these are just 2 examples of ideas that we're kicking around. Staff deployment, and that just has to do with how do we send our people out in the field to do the work. In our organization, traditionally, we've used the broadcast maintenance approach, which is basically small teams doing the same tasks throughout the system. So folks will mow 1 week, they may do horticultural tree work the next week, they may do irrigation the next week, and they're typically working in teams. Works really well in smaller communities, smaller crews. It builds a ton of camaraderie for sure. It's easier to bring people on board because they're almost always working in groups. You typically you can be a little more, you have a little reduced cost of vehicles and equipment since that's all shared. One of the weaknesses, and what we're finding is as our communities spread out, is a tremendous amount of travel time. It's a 20-minute drive, at least for me. Liz is probably faster, but it's a 20-minute drive from West. Everybody's faster than me, but it's from West Hills to Dancer, it takes me half a day. So it's a good thing I'm not a maintenance.
Are you walking?
I don't walk.
Sadly, no.
Yeah, sadly, no. And so, looking at how we operate, we're going to take a hard look at doing zone maintenance, which is it's similar to what we do in streets, where we break the city up into zones. And a great analogy for you folks would be wards, right? You break the city up into wards. Each ward has a counselor. Same idea here. You'd break it into zones. For us, it would most likely begin as a hybrid approach because not every facility we have lends itself to putting a single person out there. Couldn't put one person in Discovery or Dancer. Those are going to almost always have to be a crew type approach. But, the idea is okay, how can we reduce that travel time? How can we be more focused on what we're doing? And one of the real benefits of it is that, like I said, it reduces travel time, but also increases that sense of ownership. So if I'm taking care of Taylor, it's mine, right? If Liz is taking care of Bend the River, it's hers, right? And so you allow people to have that ownership, and I think that's a benefit. So we're going to take a hard look at that. So, and then another example, next slide, John, would be how we use contracts. As part of the first phase of our core services work, we added a pretty good chunk of money in contracts. So we're taking a hard look at how we're applying that money and looking at how can we leverage that money to basically free up our staff to do other work. One of the specific examples that we're looking at is that historically we've done landscape maintenance around city buildings and city-owned parking lots with our in-house staff. And I have to give you a little bit of honest answer here is when I first went to work here, we did contract it. And so 18, 19 years later, I'm kind of thinking, I might want to revisit that decision. So we're going to take a hard look at that. If we do that, it would free up almost that FTE that would be able to work elsewhere and do more directly related park work. So it's those kind of connections and how we're looking at how we use contracting. The one thing I say it every year is I always like to be a little cautious about how we use contracting because contracting can definitely augment what you're doing, and I couldn't look any of you in the eye and say there's not a single thing that our staff does that can't be contracted. That's a fact. Right up until the time it snows, or you have an ice storm, or you have a flood. And that's where it's always good to have some latent capacity so we can, for example, we have a 9 FTE in the park system that basically transfers to streets when it snows. we wouldn't have that capability to do what we do. We have another 4 or 5 guys, 6 guys actually from collections. So having that latent capacity is important. But no doubt that we can make better use of the contract dollars we have, and this is one example. So with that, I would wrap it up and certainly take whatever questions you all might have.
Thank you both so much. Liz and David, this was a great presentation. Do members of the council have any questions or comments at this time? Councilor Chenoweth?
Fantastic presentation. Thank you.
Good job, Liz.
Additional comments? Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time here
Thanks for
today.
having us. We appreciate
you.
it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. John, do you have any closing thoughts for us, or?
I guess just maybe one bit of kudos to Liz and David and their team. We see a lot of different communities and different park systems, and they're just doing an incredible job. I think David gave the example of, his team kind of collaborating and bouncing ideas off each other, and you don't often see that in, especially with park maintenance. So I just wanted to point that out. What a great job that we see they're doing, especially when it's not always the case with a lot of park systems. So, thank you.
All right, wonderful, thank you. And Director Muir, any final thoughts from you? None from you. All right, wonderful, well, thank you. And I will now close the work session at 6:51 PM. Thank you to everybody that's here for the council meeting. We will have about a 9-minute break, and we'll start the meeting at 7 PM when the meeting is noticed. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
We're so close. We're just ticking the seconds down to 7 o'clock. We will just wait since we are legally noticed to begin at 7 p.m. And so folks that may not be tuning in at home or joining the Zoom, or they might still be walking in the back door. So we'll just enjoy each other's company for the next 30 to 45 seconds or less. It's lovely to see such a large audience here today. Thank you all for being here. We greatly appreciate it and look forward to the meeting. All right, good evening. It is now 7 p.m. and I will call the regular business meeting of the McMinnville City Council to order and request that Claudia Cisneros, City Recorder, do a roll call.
Counselor Geary,
Good evening.
Counselor Minke,
Present.
Counselor Chenoweth,
Present.
Counselor Payne,
Here.
Counselor Peralta. Here. Council President Garvin is making his way. Mayor Drabkin.
Here, thank you. Having so many officers here, I would, without having asked you in advance, would be honored if you would come up to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and now that I have you halfway here, why don't you stay with us, and I'd welcome up Chief Matt Scales to perform an oath of office ceremony.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Everybody that's in attendance, I'd call now Corporal Marhofer. We've got Corporal Carrillo, Corporal Burt, and Corporal Anderson, and we will do the oath. As I mentioned before, this time we won't be doing the badge paintings. Unfortunately, the badges didn't make it in, but we're going to do the oath. I think this is an important time for everybody to celebrate this massive accomplishment that our amazing officers, now corporals, have completed. It was a very competitive process. Our corporals are the first line of our supervision. I'd like to say that maybe someday one of these four will be the chief. You all look like chiefly material, so Bert's got a very strong jaw. At any rate, first line of supervision, these folks are going to be our future leaders. I think the city's in excellent hands. They're super intelligent. They've got the leadership skills that we're looking for as a department, and I think as a city. And I look forward to nothing but amazing growth from you all. And I think you guys are going to do yourselves proud. And more importantly, I think you're going to do the city and the citizens proud. So without further ado, raise your hand. Repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon. I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics and the rules and regulations of the McMinnville Police Department, while faithfully performing my duties as corporal for the city of McMinnville, Oregon. Congratulations. I'd be remiss if I didn't, on behalf of the PD, thank the family and friends that showed up to support them. These gentlemen up here are leaders, and you all should be extremely proud of them. So thank you for coming to the citizens. Thank you for acknowledging them. And to the fire department, I know Chief Law and Chief Hanovan, you can come work for us anytime. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll now move into the portion of the evening where we take comments from community members. Any interested audience members are invited to provide comments, and any comment provided will be limited to 3 minutes per person for a total of 30 minutes. If you wish to speak and you're on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature, and when your turn is up, we'll announce your name and unmute your mic. You may also send a chat directly to our city recorder, and she will announce you. And please, when you make testimony, announce your name and the city you live in for the record. And if you're in the audience, please remember to fill out a public comment card to submit to the city recorder prior to leaving for the record. Do we have anyone signed up this evening, Claudia?
Yes, and I'll state for the record that council received a letter from Krista Powell. I emailed it to the council, and it will be made part of the public record in the amended packet tomorrow. And William Sykes on Zoom signed up to speak first.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Sykes, we will get your screen and your mic unmuted, and then if you'll state your name and the city you reside in, and there will be a timer on the screen that you can track your own time with. And please begin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, esteemed council people. Tonight, I want to quote, my name is William Sykes. I live in McMinnville. Tonight, I want to quickly quote Municipal Code 8-10-260 with regard to vehicle noises. The use of any vehicle or engine, either stationary or moving, in a manner that causes or creates any loud or unnecessary grating, grinding, rattling, or other noise, including the discharge in open air of exhaust of any steam engine, internal combustion engine, motorboat, or motor vehicle, except through a muffler or other device which will effectively prevent loud or explosive noises and the emission of annoying smoke. I'm here to talk about the noise pollution problem that we have in McMinnville, which is generated from loud cars, trucks, and motorcycles, ripping up and down most streets, most hours of the day. I moved here in 2008 from a city with loud cars, gunshots, all kinds of stuff. It's called Dallas, Texas. It was very quiet and peaceful in McMinnville in 2008. In Mac, we used to have 2 motorcycle police officers, as I understand it, performing traffic enforcement. Unfortunately, McMinnville is catching up to Dallas with regards to noise pollution. We noticed a major uptick in loud vehicles during the pandemic, and it's growing every day. These loud vehicles are a mix of young folks in fancy cars and young folks in not so fancy cars. We used to hear these vehicles during weekends. Now we hear them every day and now throughout the night. No neighborhood in town is immune to this. Walk down Adams or Baker or 3rd and you'll hear it. Our least favorite are the cars that pop like a machine gun. Pop, pop, pop. We all know what I'm talking about. McMinnville is not the only city in the U.S. that's seen an uptick in modified exhaust and subsequent street racing. Look no further than Portland, Bend, or Los Angeles. What is noise pollution? Health experts warn it's a growing problem that's not only confined to our ears, but causes stress-related conditions like anxiety, high blood pressure, and insomnia. When there's a loud noise, the auditory system signals that something is wrong, triggering a fight or flight response in the body, flooding it with stress hormones that cause inflammation and can ultimately lead to disease. What's being done about this? In California, legislators passed 2 laws in 2022 aimed at quieting the environment. One directs CHP to test noise detecting cameras, which may eventually issue automatic tickets for cars that make noise above a certain level. The other forces drivers of illegally modified cars to fix them before they can be re-registered. Please, City Council, let's start a conversation about noise pollution in McMinnville. There are solutions that can be considered. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the comment. Perhaps we could follow up with Mr. Sykes, referencing our ability to enforce our ordinance as it relates to needing to be present and be able to register the level of noise. Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else signed up for public comment?
No one else has pre-registered, but I do want to state for the record that Council President Garvin has joined us via Zoom.
Thank you. Welcome, Council President. Would anyone in the audience like to testify before the council this evening? All right, thank you. Would anyone on Zoom like to testify before the council this evening? Again, you can either use the raise your hand function or send a chat directly to our city recorder. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Sykes, and thank you all again for being here. We're now going to have two presentations. The first will be from McMinnville Water and Light, and we welcome our general manager, John Dietz, and thank you so much for being here. As I can say by a little way of intro that over the last year or so, the council and the McMinnville Water and Light Commission have come together in various ways to talk about information sharing and moving forward. And while our general manager of our utility and our city manager meet every month and share information back, we're also now beginning a routine of quarterly updates to either governing body. And so our general manager will be joining us here, and conversely, our city manager will be joining the McMinnville Water and Light Commission to do presentations such as this. So thank you so much. This is the first, and we greatly appreciate you being here.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor, and I'll go ahead and get started, and if anybody has, any councilors have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. First slide, Claudia. So we'll talk about water, our water system first. Currently, we are actually working on an amendment to our current water master plan, which we anticipate will be to the commission next month. This is a few of the projects we have in the plan. Currently, total cost for those projects in today's dollars, $189 million. The primary one that we're focused on right now is the finished water transmission main. That is the pipeline that supplies water from the treatment plant to our service reservoirs at Fox Ridge. Those lines are about 10 miles long. The line we're focused on right now is the 16-inch/14-inch line that was installed in the early 1940s. It's a portion steel/asbestos cement pipe that was installed at that time. And we have completed, I think, go ahead to the next slide, Claudia. So right now we're working on that. We've got the engineering complete for what we call phase 3 of that project. We've completed phases 1 and 2. Phase 1 was the tunnel that we installed back in 2015, and phase 2 was a portion of the line that had approximately 100 pinholes in it. The biggest one was the size of a softball. And so that was replaced in 2019. And we are currently working on, we actually received a grant from the county to do engineering for phases 3 and 4. And the engineering is complete for phase 3, which will take from the service reservoirs north to just north of Baker Creek, the actual creek itself. That one is a priority because we actually have our water line exposed in the creek. So we're working on that one as hopefully having our easements in the next year and starting construction the following year. The raw water line is another project that we're working on. That's the water line that takes water from Haskins Creek to basically Haskins Creek Dam to the treatment plant to be processed. That line was installed, we're not sure, but probably in the early 1950s. And it's currently a steel line, and we're going to replace that with HDP, which is high-density polyethylene pipe. It's a plastic product. We have one line in town right now that is that material, and this will be actually the second one that we install of that type of material. And we're hoping to start construction next summer. Next one. So this is a kind of just a breakdown of the line that we're working on. The line is about 10 miles long. So far, we've replaced about 10,000 feet of the 54,000 and change of the line. Phases 1 and 2, you can see phase 1 was at the treatment plant. Phase 2 is actually in the middle of the line. And phase 3 and 4 are the two phases that we're currently working on. Phase 4, we have the engineering is about 90% complete now. And our goal there is to have the engineering done on these phases in case we have opportunities for grants for replacement of these lines. So we're trying to make sure we have shovel-ready projects for future grants. Next one, Claudia. Thank you. We'll move to electric. As you've probably seen, we upgraded our substation out on Baker Creek. The substation was essentially doubled in capacity. But what also we did was we actually improved the transmission system while we did that as well. So we now have the ability to switch between two of our 115,000 volt transmission lines without having to take outages at that substation. So we've essentially increased the reliability of both our distribution system and our transmission system. Okay, and then we've got the next substation we're actually working on is what we call 3 Mile Lane, which is out near the hospital. That project we're looking at probably, with the supply chain issues, we're probably looking at sometime in 28 or 29 to start construction. And let's see, okay, next one. Thank you. Facility plan. So right now we're working on our facility plan. The master plan was completed in June, and we'll be actually at the commission again in next week to talk about our seismic assessment of our warehouse building. The commission wanted to make sure that that building was up to the current earthquake standard, and we're actually going to bring it above that standard. We're going to bring it to an immediate occupancy standard, since that's where we store most of our equipment and materials. We've got the engineering completed, or it's what they call the Tier 1 assessment, and that has come back, and it looks like that will be a project that would be significantly less than tearing down the old warehouse and rebuilding it. So we're looking at a significant savings in doing that work, and so that will be at the commission next week. And then our next step will be moving forward with an architecture and engineering design for that. Go ahead, next one. So this is just a concept of, this is actually if you look at that, to the right is the existing facility, or the existing main office, and then to the left would be expansion of that and this would be in phase, what we call phase 1. So phase 1 would include expansion of the office building and parking lot improvements, and then an expansion to the west, which you can't really see in this drawing, which would actually be for the engineering department. Go to the next slide. This is the master plan as it's laid out. So phase 1 would be the area in green, and that would include, or actually the area in blue. The area in blue would be a future parking for employees, the expansion of the office and the engineering, and then also relocating our transformer yard and installing actually what we call a pipe yard, where we would store our spare pipe and transformers. And then phase 2 would be an expansion of, or actually a new fleet building and an upgrade to the existing building, a remodel of that. And then phase 3 would be expansion of our warehouse building and remodeling the crew areas in that building. And then phase 4, if we actually got to that point, would be some modifications to our yard for laydown areas for materials. Okay, next slide. So these are the overall costs that we received from the architect that we had. Phase 1, which is about $10 million, and actually the warehouse seismic upgrades are what we're calling Phase 0.5, so that will happen actually before Phase 1, so that we have the warehouse building upgraded prior to we starting construction on Phase 1. So this is probably one of our biggest challenges that we've faced in the last probably 2 years, is supply chain issues. Currently, you can see pricing for pre-pandemic and post-pandemic materials. So for example, our standard 6-inch valve, which we use, or excuse me, it would ductile iron pipe, $13.71 a foot pre-pandemic to $23. But probably the bigger issue is the electric side, where we're seeing basically issues with actually getting materials or getting transformers. Right now, we're currently on an allocation of transformers, meaning that we have a specific number that we can buy every year from one manufacturer. The other manufacturers are out over 2 years to get essentially a distribution transformer, one that we would use in the distribution system.
Do you want to talk a little bit more specifically about where that use would show up, or where you could posit it in a kind of real-life situation, if you will?
In a real life would be in a subdivision. So, you know, the green transformers are pad mounts, the gray are pole mount transformers. Either one is a challenge because primarily the issue is the core steel. It's a specialized, what they call silicon carbide grain oriented core steel, which means all the grains in the steel, if you looked under a magnifying glass, go the same direction. And it's specific for electrical equipment. And the challenge with that is electric vehicles are taking those supplies as well. Excuse me. The other one that we've seen significant increases is what you see up there, 1-aught, we call 1-aught, 220 mil underground primary cable. And the cost of that's gone up over double. That's what we use for subdivisions. So, next slide. Oops. So, go ahead. This is the next. Thank you. So this is one of our biggest issues with our electric utility. Our long-term power supply contract with the Bonneville Power Administration expires in 2028. So we're currently working on new long-term contracts, and we receive about 97% of our power supply from the Bonneville Power Administration. Their system is essentially, for lack of a better term, tapped out. There's no more capacity, no more availability of power from them. So we are right now in the process of doing what we call an integrated resource plan to determine where we're going to get additional resources or additional power supply. And those additional power supplies will be substantially more expensive than what we're buying today. So there's going to be a substantial difference in the cost between our current power supply and anything post-2020, what we call post-2028. So we're hoping to have new contracts in place by 2025. And the reason that they're so early is because Bonneville will be looking at acquiring the resources if they need additional resources. So they're going to be what we call Tier 1, which is the current power supply that we have, is essentially what you see up there. It's the 86% hydro, the 10% nuclear, and the 4%, which we call unspecified resources or unspecified purchases. Going forward, Bonneville will be looking at what we call Tier 2 resources. Those will be essentially non-federal resources. They'll be resources that are acquired by Bonneville, but they'll be at a substantially higher price, probably closer to twice what we're paying today. Right now, Tier 2 is about $62 a megawatt hour, and we're currently paying Tier 1, we're paying about $34 or $35 a megawatt hour. So that's going to be a challenge. And so that's part of the reason that we do so much with our conservation plan, is that is one of the ways we have offset having to have additional resources. I think that might be, is that the last one? Yes. So any other questions, comments?
Great. Thank you. The council have any questions on the presentation? Councilor Menke.
Well, obviously, costs are going up. I mean, at this point in time, I assume the board is looking at projecting how they're going to finance some of this in the future?
Yes. You know, timber revenue has been one thing that we've used, breaking projects up into smaller pieces so that we can handle them is another way we've done that. And that's why you see that transmission line. When we did our master plan in 2020, let's see, it was 2011, that cost for that line was $24 million. And we're looking at now to complete it, which we've already done 2 of the 8 phases, at 76. Yeah. And so that's one of the things, that's why we're looking at grants. The commission's typically not like to borrow money to do these projects, but we do have the opportunity to borrow internally between the electric and water if we need additional funds.
Thank you. Additional questions? Councilor Peralta?
Regarding the financial increase that we're expecting in 2028, do you have any way of knowing yet, like, what percentage of the total amount of electricity you're likely to be buying in 28 is going to be on that more expensive second-tier market?
So right now, for McMinnville, for our service territory, we have what they call headroom, which means we are not using all of our Tier 1 allocation. With the new contract, our headroom goes away. So we don't have that anymore. And so we could be, we do have a small resource from Riverbend that we can bring to load, which we typically right now are remarketing, or Bonneville's remarketing that energy for us, because we don't have that. The one thing I will say is that if it does happen, it'll be at a very small percentage of the total right now, unless we get some significant loads. And if we do get significant loads, the likelihood what will happen is the commission will probably say, you can come on the system, but you're going to pay the Tier 2 costs, so that doesn't impact the current ratepayers.
In terms of the trajectory of use as a city, I understand you're saying that individual use, electricity use is maybe going down because of the...
We're flat, essentially, is what we call it.
Flat, given the growth? Meaning...
Yes, because what we've done is we've actually offset the growth with energy efficiency.
Got it.
So we project we're running a load growth of about 0.5% per year. And we've been running about, the last, I think, rate period, we got right around, I think, 0.5 an average megawatt or 0.4 average megawatts for energy efficiency. So very, very close. So that's one of the reasons we still have headroom where a lot of utilities do not have headroom anymore. And they're into the more expensive products already.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do you want to expand a little bit on how the rates are set for the consumer, just so there's not a misperception that so that there's not a perception that of how things will translate, since we don't know how they'll translate?
So what the commission does is we go through what we call a cost of service analysis every 2 years for each utility. So this year we'll be doing a water cost of service, and then the next year we'll be doing an electric cost of service. And that's what we base our rates on. So we look at that analysis, and then we calculate what the rate will be in the future. So, for example, our BPA rate is a power rate plus transmission. So there's a transmission component, and then there's the power costs that we purchase. And so we take those, we take our operating costs, and then that becomes essentially our rate. The steel mill is actually what we call a pass-through. They have a pass-through contract because they don't use the distribution system. They actually cover the costs of those assets through, basically, if something fails, they replace that at their expense. Whereas if something fails in the distribution system for everybody else, that gets melded into the rates. And so if we have a distribution transformer fail, that gets melded into under our rate base for our costs.
Thank you. And Councilor Chenoweth?
So you said McMinnville right now is basically flat. I know there's a lot of talk about increasing the requirements of electric vehicles. How is that going to impact, or is there any projection on what kind of impacts that's going to have on the availability of power and potential costs coming from BPA as a result?
So our cost from BPA will be the same for our Tier 1. It's anything above that, so all that load growth driven by those other electric vehicles. There's really two pieces we're looking at. It's electric vehicles and fuel switching from natural gas to electric for homes, heating and for homes. The estimates I've seen are somewhere around 3 times the increase for those things, and that would be on our distribution system, because we really have 2 systems. We have the distribution system, which is our residential and our commercial, and then we have the industrials, which would be Cascade Steel and air gas. And that would be tied to our distribution system, which is probably it's about 50% of the load we have. So 50% of our load is going to see a load growth that could be 2 to 3 times what it is today. But that time frame, it really depends on adoption of the cars.
And that would still stay within our Tier 1?
No. That would drive pricing up. That would drive us to Tier 2 pricing for that incremental additional energy. So basically, if you think about it, if we double our load, we would still pay our Tier 1, let's say it's 100 megawatts, we'd pay 50 megawatts would be at Tier 1 and 50 would be at Tier 2. So it would become a melded rate. So it wouldn't be, you're not going to pay, whatever that rate is, you're going to pay a melded rate over the whole system.
And at the risk to sound like I'm focused on attacking electric vehicles, I'd like to also ask, if I understood you correctly, you're saying the cost of the transformers are also going up as a direct result of electric vehicles?
Because those same materials are used in the transformers. Electric motor takes steel and it takes copper wire, just like a transformer does.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Councilor Payne?
Thank you. Mr. Dietz, I appreciate I feel like it's a 50,000-foot view of Mac Water and Light, because there's, so many pieces. So forgive me if the questions are more minute. So my first question is, what is Mac Water and Light doing to involve the neighbors of the watershed property in wildland fire mitigation?
So when you mean neighbors, are you talking, so our neighbors?
Like BLM and Weyerhaeuser.
Our neighbors are BLM, right. So we actually work with BLM, but BLM's a hard organization to work with because it's a federal government. And so what we've done is we've taken and we've built our own wildfire plan to make sure that we actually, as an organization, have a plan. So I'll give you an example. There's currently a 230,000 volt transmission line that's owned by Bonneville Power Administration that runs through our watershed. We actually went out and actually designed a program where we actually took the trees down around that line specifically to eliminate the risk. So we actually harvested around that line, and the whole purpose of that was to mitigate for wildfires. And so the other thing that we do is, I don't know if, we actually have our own brush fire truck. Water and Light actually has its own brush truck, and we actually have our own tanker, and those are actually staged at our treatment plant during fire season. So roughly June 1st to September 30th, we have our own fire truck there, and we actually train our water treatment crew every year on firefighting. And then we also work with the Department of Natural Resources, Department of Forestry, and so that we have worked with them. We had the ball bearing fire. I don't know if you're familiar with that fire this last summer. That was.
Oh, yes.
You know, the one right, so that was only within, that was within quarters of a mile of our watershed.
Yeah, like
So we-
Panther Creek, Vaughn Road
Yeah,
area.
so we actually mobilized and we actually brought our dozer up to make sure that we could actually make fire breaks if we had to. So we were actually trying to be proactive and work with, you know, Department of Forestry. BLM actually tends to kind of rely on Department of Forestry for that. They don't really do much, and so they do have access to some of our roads, but we maintain our own roads and we do all that work ourselves.
Okay. And the two smaller questions, I guess, are there any plans to replace any of the above-ground lines or to insulate direct bury lines?
Okay, so well, that'll probably be two parts, because when you insulate underground, that's a little different. I didn't bring any samples, but I should have. So we have, right now what we're focused on is replacing what we call direct buried underground cable. So which means it was installed without being installed in conduit. And so that is very expensive. Typically, just to do the conduit work, you're probably in a subdivision around $100,000. And then, excuse me, our crews have to come in and then install the facilities afterward. So that's what we're focused on right now. Converting from overhead to underground is very expensive. Typically, the cost difference is somewhere between 3 and 5 times greater for underground. And so we do have an underground fund that we do keep for replacement of overhead or conversion from overhead to underground. The last one we did was Hill Road. So we did about 3/4 of a mile, I think maybe even a little bit more. That was all converted from what we call our primary 12 kV system to an underground. That wire typically runs about $18 a foot now, times 3. So where the overhead wire would run about $2 a foot. So, but yes, we do have money there. When we have opportunities, we look at those.
And then the last question, thank you for that. And then the last question I have is just potential projections to replace aging water lines.
So for aging water lines, so our system is probably, I would say, much better than most in the area. So currently, our system is a little bit over 70% ductile iron pipe, which is basically the premium pipe material. And the next largest piece is cast iron, and that's what we're focused on replacing. And so we typically do two things. One is we do our own in-house pipe replacement program. And so we'll do anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 feet with our internal crews every year. And then we also do some, when we find bigger projects, we'll hire a contractor. For example, I think it was year before last, maybe it was last year, we actually replaced about 6,000 feet on Highway 99 before they did the repaving along from basically McDonald all the way to, I think it was almost all the way to Lafayette. So whenever we have, and we work with David quite a bit on this, whenever we do, the city's going to do a paving project or a seal coat or anything, we'll come in beforehand if we have older pipe material, and we'll go ahead and replace that ahead of time. So if you look at our system, I think we have about 155 miles of distribution pipe, and 70% of that is ductile, and 20% of that is cast. So we have roughly, 30 miles of cast left to replace in our system. So.
I guess I have a follow-up question. So is there any benefit to prioritizing those subdivisions that have a mix of the cast iron and direct bury power?
Well, okay, so they're not in the same trench typically, so it would be two different costs. So the cast iron, typically cast is usually, most of that cast is in the older part of town, which is overhead. And so usually how we prioritize replacement of the cast is we look at, if it's had a failure, then we prioritize that as a replacement. And so the way cast iron pipe fails, it fails longitudinally, so it fails extreme. Example would be Michael Book, where we had a failure of a 12-inch, and we had a 5-foot hole, a 5-foot long piece of the pipe blow out of that pipe. And so we tend to look at those types of failures first, and then we prioritize pipe that's failed because we know we're going to be back replacing that. Yep.
Any additional questions for Mr. Dietz? Thank you so much for coming today and starting us off here. I greatly appreciate it. Nice to see you.
We'll see you Tuesday.
See you Tuesday. Thank you. And we have a second presentation this evening. We have our annual McMinnville Downtown Association presentation, and I would welcome Executive Director Doris Towery to present.
Thank you, Mayor Drapkin and Council. And we have our board president, Danny Chisholm, who is also regional manager for McMinnville and has oversight of Hotel Oregon.
Thank you both for being here.
Thank you. So 2023 was a great year for the MDA, and I'm proud of the work our board and our staff has done. We've remained focused on the mission of our organization, and we are honored to be the caretakers of our community's greatest treasure. When the MDA was created, in the 80s, the local business and property owners saw a need to revitalize our downtown and went on a mission to attract businesses to fill our empty storefronts. Over the years, the challenges the MDA has had put in front of it have changed. Our storefronts are no longer empty, and the sidewalks are filled with people who live here, as well as people who have had the privilege to visit our precious community due to our vibrant tourism and hospitality industries. We now find ourselves the caretakers of 3rd Street, the ones who are tasked with keeping the charm alive while helping our business and property owners thrive for many years to come.
Oh, Claudia, if you want to flip slides for us. Thank you.
The MDA board has worked hard to lean into our foundational values that you see listed here to ensure our members and our community receive a high return on their investment. As we maneuver through today to set us up for the future, it's important that we do the right thing for our community and that our decisions are consistent and the goals are consistent with the goals set by this board. We must make sure that the organization has a balanced, responsible funding source to create long-term organizational stability. We are committed to building collaborative, open dialogues to build strong relationships with all members, partner organizations, and the city of McMinnville. It is important for 3rd Street to be safe and inclusive, to be a safe and inclusive environment for everyone who comes to work, shop, dine, and visit our special place. We will stay focused on making all decisions intentionally, taking the needs and concerns of our members into account, not just the ones who speak the loudest. This is our MDA team currently. Our Executive Director, Doris Towery, our Jack of all trades, Joe Yeager, and we are currently hiring for a communications and events manager person. That posting will go out shortly, and hopefully that position will be filled shortly after the first of the year.
A small but mighty team.
Our board of directors consists of myself, Vice President Meg Ordaz, Secretary Katie Diaboy, Treasurer Sandy Schultz, Past President Heather Miller, and other directors Kate Gowell, Jerry Hunter, Peter Kirchner, Taylor, Nora Lamb, Heather Richards, and Brooke Anderson.
I think on the board of directors, it's important to point out that through our bylaws, we make sure that it is a good mix of both businesses and property owners so that we have a diverse voice of the businesses and properties that are represented downtown. Claudia.
So this past October, we met with Sherry Stewart, who is a representative of the Oregon Main Street organization. The McMinnville Downtown Association is one of only 5 accredited downtown associations in the state of Oregon, and we are also one of the oldest, and we are proud of that. Go ahead.
So on our board priorities, and especially as we're gearing into our role and involvement with the Third Street Improvement Project, is really working to build even stronger communications with our stakeholders and our businesses downtown. We have brought up and back onto its feet block captains, which about 30 years ago existed as basically our communication chain along 3rd Street. And so, in fact, we just came from that meeting before we arrived here tonight to get that activated once again, and hoping that that also helps to build stronger relationships among our businesses downtown. That really is to help us build muscle as and learning as we gear into a major construction project for 3rd Street. So we're excited to have that in play, and we've got a couple of years for us to really build the strength of that communication channel. And I will, it has been a priority for a long time, but really working as we move forward, evaluating what our income streams are and looking how we diversify that and strengthen it and make sure that we are sustainable into the future to be able to serve our community.
So the 4 pillars that the Main Street organization are built upon are economic vitality, promotions, organization, and design. Economic Vitality Committee focuses on the capital incentives and other economic financial tools to assist new and existing businesses, catalyst property development, and create a supportive environment for entrepreneurs and innovators that drive local economies, that's the word. Sorry. We had a record-breaking year at a farmer's market. Farmer's market is one of the things I think that the MDA, we're just so proud of that little thing. And Heather Miller, who is our past president, was our market coordinator this year and did a fantastic job. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We secured $200,000 in Oregon Main Street revitalization grants for the Mac Theater project. We secured $40,000 in additional funds from URAC for the 2023 downtown infrastructure. And we built the 2nd Street parking lot garbage bay to help tidy up the entrance to our 3rd Street.
And I'll note the revitalization grants are grants that we have access to being a member of Main Street America as well as Oregon Main Street. So that gives us an opportunity to really work with our local businesses to determine what are projects that folks are looking to make investment for in our community, and then be able to support in partnership, write a grant for that, and to be able to help drive new development in our downtown corridor. And our promotion committee, I do want to know each of these pillars, we have a board member that leads these committees, and then we bring in additional businesses and community members to participate. Our promotion committee has been very active this year. We had a wildly successful UFO Fest, and probably we think maybe the largest that we've had in its history. And we anticipate that's probably something that will continue to grow with the interest around the country and life in other places. We had a record-breaking Halloween trick-or-treat this year. Thank you for great weather that brings everybody out and makes it a lot easier. And participation in our scarecrows on a lamppost, which is just a really fun way for folks to come downtown and have a little fun and vote on those. We are currently in the midst of our tour the weeks before Christmas, and we were very active supporting our businesses for the Shop Small Saturday, so you probably are still seeing the vinyls and signs to shop our local businesses all in our downtown corridor. And once again, for our 3rd year, had a very successful Dine Outside season and additional activities during the course of the summer for folks to come downtown and enjoy our living room in downtown McMinnville.
And this year, we listened to our members, and we included a retail, 2 weekends of retail shopping where the retailers participated by spilling out. And we are looking at the Dine Outside program to be more inclusive of all the businesses downtown and not just food and beverage next year. The organization committee is the one that creates our strong foundation. They go over our bylaws for us. They make sure that we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing. They also are in charge of throwing our annual dinner, which was highly successful and well-attended last February. They are responsible for helping us build a sustainable budget and direct the MDA board and executive director. And they were also responsible for hiring Doris Towery this year. So.
Our design committee, which really is working to position our downtown district as a center of our community and the hub of our economic activity, and also trying to create a positive image and showcase the unique characteristics of McMinnville. We're really proud that this year we were able to secure a $50,000 T-Mobile grant, which is a hometown grant. It's, again, a pool of money that's available by being a member of Main Street America. And that is being matched with support from Visit McMinnville. So we are already have a 9-person committee in place that is getting ready to vet artists and plan for design. We will be doing the entire alley between Evans and Davis. And so really excited to create a warm, welcoming, engaging place and for Visit McMinnville to be able to really activate that art space behind their offices there to create a gathering space for our community. And also is kind of a preemptive step as we do gear into a construction project that we create a space in that back alleyway that businesses will potentially be able to use those back entrances as their main entrances and it not feel like you're coming in off of an alley. So we're really excited about that project. The 9-person team is a really diverse, interesting, eclectic mix of community members, business owners. There's a church that backs up to that alley that's sitting on the committee with us. So I'm looking forward to see what a really incredible project that grows into.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
My mic flipped out for a second. Is the umbrella girl going to get painted over?
No, I know that's one that we're trying to, we already had that discussion. The very first meeting was to talk about how do we preserve what's there and then grow, from that. So no, we would not get rid of that.
Thank you.
We also partner with Visit McMinnville with the sidewalk art that has basically been timed to be the first weekend of Dine Outside, so that again creates a little extra excitement and beauty down in our corridor on Main Street. And of course you can see one of the beautiful pieces of art up on this particular slide. We're responsible for the hanging basket replacements that happen. We do a spring and a fall, and I know that that's something we regularly have people pop into the Cozine House to tell us how beautiful that is and how much they appreciate that throughout our downtown area. And then we work with the Public Art Committee, and we just got the Ben Franklin glasses fixed again, so hopefully they stay fixed this time.
One of our proudest events or moments of the year is kicking off the farmers market. And this year we were able to pump $45,000 of SNAP dollars and Double Up food bucks back into our community for our highest need community members, which we're really proud of. We had 120 vendors throughout the season. We collected over $58,000 in vendors fees and just under $10,000 in sponsorships. And like I said, Heather Miller, who has been an incredible incredible MDA president, took the reins of that this year, and she'll be sticking around next year to help us as we continue to grow the market.
And I want to note, the Double Up food bucks, that allows families to really, and especially in these challenging times with inflation, to really stretch their dollars and be able to buy healthy food.
Do you mind talking about specifically how the program works? Actually, it's such a great program. Just make sure that everybody is aware of the process and how it makes such an impact.
So the SNAP dollars, folks get loaded on that qualify, loaded onto a card. For every $20 that they spend in their SNAP dollars, it gets matched with another $20 from the Double Up food bucks. So basically, they double what they can buy in produce and food for their families. The SNAP dollars they can use, for meat, eggs, and dairy that is there. The Double Up food bucks is for produce, but you can also buy with those dollars vegetable and fruit starts, so that also if folks are growing gardens in their own home, that helps them to be able to do that. And all that money is also supporting our local farmers and vendors that are there. So it really is the ultimate win-win for our community.
Thank you.
And Dine Outside, this was a brilliant idea to really help our restaurant, our food and drink businesses during COVID. And it was such a success in the community. We've continued it even once we've come out of the pandemic. We have incredible sponsorships that help make it possible for us to do this. We had 28 businesses downtown that participated in this. And I do want to say a special thank you to the city that through partnership with the city and with Representative Elmer, we were able to work with OLCC because the change in what had happened with licensing around our businesses to be able to spill out and, have that space to serve in the streets would have been cost prohibitive for our businesses to be able to do this. And so with the partnership and really working a plan on that, we were able to make it affordable for our businesses to do that and continue to support this to happen downtown. So I'm just greatly appreciative to those partnerships, and when we come together, it does take a village, and really made a huge difference. And we heard from our businesses that sales, in fact, folks, when I talked the very first weekend, a number of restaurants had doubled sales that first weekend out. So it continues to be a driving force to support them to be successful. And we incorporated this year, hearing from our retail businesses that everybody's down there for food and drink, but we want them to come in and shop. So we work with them to do a sidewalk sale this summer, and we're in conversations to how we grow that into something even greater next summer, whether that's, once a month or, different types of ideas for us to attract folks to be in our stores, as well as dining and enjoying our tasting rooms that are down as well. And again, a huge thank you. Our sponsors that jump in for these particular special events really make it possible for us to be able to make those successful and attract people down. So a big shout out to folks for that.
UFO Festival. Who would have thought that 24 years ago it would grow into what it has been? We estimate, there's no official count, but around 20,000 people attended the parade this year. If you were there, you saw them all because they were everywhere over the weekend. And then $7,500 in sponsorships, over $10,000, or just under $11,000 in vendor and booth fees. We worked really closely with city police, the fire department, and public works this year. In 2021, the parade, when we came out of COVID, was huge. And we needed to make some adjustments for public safety. So we worked really closely with them last year to make some, the starts of some improvements. We're continuing that work. We reformed the citywide UFO committee that'll have representation from the different city departments, Linfield, Evergreen, and other people who we've invited, in order to continue to put safety first. That was, we were fortunate, I don't know, fortunate. We got to watch a dash cam of the lead car in the parade, and it was really eye-opening to make, and it's a great event, and we're super happy we can have it, but we want to make sure that we do it safely. So know that that's on the forefront of our planning this year. Our annual awards, we have some great businesses. This is always such a challenging time because so many people are deserving, but this year our Outstanding Customer Service Award went to Hopscotch. Outstanding Business Improvement went to Humble Spirit. Rosemary Volunteer of the Year went to the McMinnville Garden Club. Business of the Year was the Blue Moon. Manager Award went to Northwest Food and Gifts, and the Outstanding Marketing and Promotion Display went to R. Stewart. Like I said, it's a tough decision every year because we'd give an award to everyone if we could, so.
Well, you can, you decide.
I know, yeah. We could give everybody an award.
Afford the plaques.
Got to keep it exciting each year.
Got to keep it exciting, for sure.
Our MacBucks program is designed, this really is, it's money that passes through. So we put this program in place to really, again, encourage folks to shop our local businesses and to shop small. And the gift card program has generated more than $33,000 in sales for folks spending that money in our downtown. And we're real proud of that. And I have to say, right now, as we're rolling into the holiday season, it's a constant revolving door in our office down at the Cozine House of folks buying these for gifts for folks or gifts for their employees and teachers. So we really appreciate that and appreciate the support for our businesses downtown.
Other ongoing efforts, obviously with people and events come garbage and cleanup. Joe plays a huge role in keeping 3rd Street looking great. He spends a lot of time removing graffiti from random businesses, and we're thankful that we can provide that service. General cleanup and pressure washing, you see him out there all the time with his pressure washer, and he's just a really great asset to our organization.
When Danny and I were talking about this presentation, I always look at how we are giving a return on people's investment. And I think the work that happens on a daily basis in this particular area is a value and return on people's membership investment that a lot of folks aren't aware of. We get calls from our businesses that'll say, can you come help us power wash? And I think, we've got the new Vintage on 3rd. We were able to go help power wash the front of the building to get it spiffed up for the new sign to go up in there. The alleyway that you see there, we were able to get out there again, clean up graffiti that was out there, power wash down, clean up garbage, and ultimately that's going to be the alleyway that our art project goes in. And like I say, graffiti removal is happening on a regular basis. Or we get a call, we just did the other parking lot. We got a call from a couple of the businesses and we were able to go in and clean up the whole garbage area, get that cleared out, power wash. So, that's an ongoing effort that is happening pretty much on a daily basis. And not sure that folks are aware, that that's a service that the MDA is providing to our business community down on 3rd Street.
Thank you.
Claudia. And this one right now, if you've been shopping downtown, this is an incredibly successful program. We are on the back edge of distributing 13,000 scratch-off tickets. So in order to get a ticket, you have to spend $25 in one of our businesses. So that $325,000 represents on the low end of how much spending has happened because of this program in downtown. And I've heard from numerous businesses that they have a customer in there and they're not quite at the $25 mark, and so they'll buy something extra so they can get their scratch-off ticket to be able to have an opportunity to win prizes. Our businesses have all kinds of wonderful offers. There are $1,500 in MacBuck cards that are in different quantities that folks can win in there. So it just is a way for us to really try and get a little bit of excitement and energy happening downtown, attract folks down, and keep them shopping at our local businesses that are supporting our community all year long. So this is something we're real proud of. Although sticking all the stickers on the 13,000 tickets is a little bit tedious, but. And the new glasses on Ben Franklin, even though this is a old picture. So, and again, I just want to say a huge thank you to the city. Just has been, for the entire existence of the MDA, an incredible partner and really makes the successes that happen for our downtown businesses possible. It makes it possible for us to have one of the most sought-after farmers markets anywhere around. Our vendors, it's their favorite one to come to. We have people who travel from all over to come to this particular farmers market. Allows us to have the opportunity to do dine outside, to have a Santa parade, to be able to have the UFO festival. And we just appreciate that support and partnership to try and keep our downtown vibrant and a wonderful place for us all together. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you especially for all the work you're doing to help keep downtown looking sharp, and our hats off to Joe as well. Please pass that along. Any questions or comments from the council? Thank you so much for the presentation. We appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you before next year, but thank you. This portion of the evening, we'll have a public hearing. This is a public hearing to consider resolution number 2023-66, a resolution adopting a supplemental budget amendment for fiscal year 2023-24 in the Affordable Housing Fund. Does any counselor need to declare a potential conflict of interest or recuse themselves regarding this resolution? Not seeing any, I will call on our finance director, Jennifer Cuellar, to give a presentation.
Yes, good evening, everyone. We are having a public hearing on this particular budget amendment for the FY24 year for the Affordable Housing Fund, because when a budget amendment is proposed that exceeds 10% of the original appropriation in the budget that was adopted, we need to do this extra step of having the public hearing and noticing that. And in this case, the addition of a new grant that we were unaware of at the time of budgeting, and then just the multi-year grants that are also in place for the Affordable Housing Fund, the estimates we made were a little short of where the actual amount of cash available for this year's activities. So we are combining the new grant and that small amount of excess, and that's what pushed us up to, I think it was about 17% over the original appropriation level for the fund. So that's the reason for the hearing and also for the budget amendment in general. So I'm happy to take any questions and open it to the public.
Thank you. Does any counselor have questions of staff at this time?
I do.
Councilor Chenoweth?
So, as I read this money is going to the Any Door Place,
Correct.
which is the navigation center.
Correct.
So, do we have an increase in the cost to build the Any Door Place? Is that what's happened here, or?
No. My understanding is the grant portfolio to fund the full activities, there were hoped for grants coming from the state that we didn't have locked in at the time of the budget. But my understanding is that no, this does not expand the original planned budget for the project.
Okay, and so the 654,000 you're saying is not coming from our funds, it's coming from a grant that's incoming that we weren't anticipating having and we now have? Am I hearing this correctly?
Yes, none of this amount is general fund or any other funding source other than a new grant, and then also just the timing issue of existing money that covers. We have several multi-year grants funding this work, and so estimates were made as to how much would be left for this year, and the estimate was off by a little under $50,000. So,
I guess where I'm struggling here, I thought I remembered that this thing came in at $3.2 million initially for our quote that was given us, and now we're saying $3.8 million. I'm a little, I mean, if I'm remembering incorrectly, that's great, but I remember being kind of astounded by how much it was costing to begin with to build this project. And so I'm just, am I remembering this wrong?
I don't recall the details of the grant, but the Affordable Housing Fund is more than just the grants for any door place. It also includes the construction excise tax component, and so that is part of what is built into that budget. So it's not exclusively grants, but we appropriate on the entire fund, not the separate components of the fund. Does that help?
A little. Jeff, you look like you're wound up to say something.
I can just say that, this is the act of authorizing the money for expenditure. It doesn't change the contractual commitments we have on the projects. I think it'd be great for us to bring back a status report on any door place and give it to you under separate cover, and we'd be happy to follow up with that information for you.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for staff? Yes, Councilor Peralta?
I just want to make sure I understand what I thought I understood before. So we put out for grants in the last budget cycle. We couldn't budget for those because we hadn't received them. We have received this, and now we're adding it into the budget. Is that basically it?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any additional questions or comments? All right. Thank you, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank Yamhill Community Cares as well. It was they were wonderful to hear us. We had other things at risk at the time, including not being able to start in this construction season. And myself and the director of YCAP were able to present, talk to the board, explain the overall financial circumstance and kind of what was at risk, which was not only getting the project underway, but also other grant monies that we would have lost if the project didn't get started. And it was a really fantastic and communal gesture for them to agree to support the project with that $609,500, which is no small amount of change by anyone's standards. So a special thank you to them. We will now start to hear public testimony. Each person testifying will be allotted 3 minutes for their testimony. We will start with anyone who's signed up in advance to testify. Has anyone signed up?
No one has signed up to testify.
Okay. Are there, is there anyone in Civic Hall who wishes to testify on this matter? No, thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to testify on this matter? Okay. And then, is there any clarification that council needs before moving forward?
I'd like to move this to a first reading.
Okay, let me conclude the public testimony for the evening. Has staff have anything that they would like to add to the record at this time? And the public hearing is now closed, and we will come back a little bit later for further action. We'll now move to advice and information items, starting with reports from counselors on their committee and board assignments. I'll start on my right this evening with Councilor Menke.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Councilor Payne?
The Landscape Review Committee approved a street tree removal for trees that had already been removed. So we ended up having a discussion about that where there is conversation around other trees that have also been removed. And I bring it up because now code enforcement is involved. So all of that to say that if you're considering removing street trees, please contact the Community Development Department. And in the street tree removal permit that was approved, it was very significant, in my opinion, because the future trees, the planting of future trees was relative to overhead power lines. So there had to be some modification in what was allowed. And then Lipsick met at the end of November and approved the Department of Correction supplemental funding for drug addicted persons application, which is good. And then they are also in the very beginning and early stages of their county equity action plan. So a survey will be going out to county staff.
Thank you. Councilor Peralta.
Thank you, Mayor. Council of Governments is taking its award nominations through the first week of January. So if the city has any projects that we would like to highlight, or if we have partners in the city that have projects that we would like to highlight that relate to community improvement, individuals within the organization that deserve leadership consideration, or a general award, please think about that and try and get it into COG by the 5th of January. Additionally, we have been trying to schedule meetings with legislative leadership on the legislative reforms to Measure 110. And that conversation is going slowly. But Mayor, if you'd like to attend our meeting on January 4th, we're expecting to have one of the two co-chairs in that meeting.
Thank you very much. We'll add it to the scheduling list. Thank you. Councilor Chenoweth.
For the second time in a row, I have nothing to report, but fair warning, all three of my committees meet between now and the next time we have this. So,
thank you. Councilor Geary.
Thank you. Affordable housing, no meeting. DEIAC will meet Thursday. MURAC, no meeting. 3rd Street Improvement Advisory Committee will be on for the January 9th from 3 to 5, either on Zoom or at the PD training room if you want to follow along. The meeting we did have was on the stormwater utility PAC. We received, reviewed, and discussed the first look at the GIS modeling and methodology on how we'll analyze what the individual burden on the stormwater system is per unit or future ratepayer potentially, and then on the stormwater system and how we'll calculate unit rates and how that translates to charges. Getting close, saw half a head nod from Leland. It was just a super technical, it was sort of a rollout of how we'll start calculating that and how that generates to a unit and how that unit generates to a charge, which all correlates to the lump cost of what we need to do to the stormwater system to start making improvements and keep us from falling off a sort of catastrophic stormwater management cliff.
Or into a stormwater sinkhole.
Or into a stormwater sinkhole, which is already into a stormwater sinkhole. We reviewed some rate model options and comparisons, and then in February, I think, is sort of the second half to that first big conversation and data dump will be more of a discussion on rate rollout, rate structure, and rate modifiers. And so really it's those two pieces will need to come together for us and that committee to have a better dialogue around rollout. The next steps, as you saw from interim Public Works Director Lofton. February, we'll have a discussion, as I said, on the rate modifiers, including credits and discounts potential, who does or doesn't get charged. March, we'll see us start holding community meetings to discuss the stormwater utility out to the public. In April, we'll present recommendations back to this body at a work session, and then in May, the City Council, this body will consider the adoption of a stormwater utility committee, and that's That discussion will begin along with sewer rates and SDCs, and then we'll go from there on how that discussion's been going. So that was a lot, and if there's any follow-up questions, I will happily point towards Leland and James Lofton.
Thank you very much. Whew. Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. Fire district stuff, and you guys will see a few different things in your packet this evening. We have an IGA for continued support by some city services, and then we have the IGA for the transfer of all the assets on the agenda this evening and in your packets. Airport Commission, we haven't met. Visit McMinnville, we haven't met. And YCOM, we did meet today. It was relatively brief, just a report from our director, Patty. Nothing really to report out on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Boy, I could report for a long time tonight, but I'll try to be quite succinct. We had all of the interviews for a number of different committees, including Affordable Housing, Historic Landmarks, Landscape Review, and Planning Commission. And I'd like to, excuse me, I would like to thank not only all of the applicants, and we had a lot of applicants for a lot of these committees, which is wonderful. And we're so delighted to see the citizenry showing up, willing to volunteer their time, get involved in these important committees that really help shape and guide the future of the city. So there were many people that were not appointed, and I just want to say that if you applied for a committee and you weren't appointed, we encourage you to reapply. We are we're so happy to have that level of interest in citizen involvement. So thank you. And then I would also like to thank my counselors that stepped in and helped with a number of these committees. So the interviewing committees were always council leadership, so either myself or Council President Garvin, a member of council, staff, the person that staffs the committee, and then typically the chair or a representative from the committee. So I have a great picture of Councilor Geary and Rachel Flores standing outside the Community Development Center at about 6:55 a.m. in preparation for the interviews that started at 7 a.m. And I think they stayed with me until 2 or 3 o'clock that day, something like that. And Councilor Chenoweth, thank you. Councilor Menke, Councilor Payne, I appreciate everybody and their time. We'll be doing, if you're on the line and you're here because you're being recommended for appointment, that's next, so don't go away. And thanks for sticking with us. In addition to that, we had what I think everybody would describe as an extremely successful council retreat. Everybody was smiling. We all took nice pictures together, and I didn't even have to poke anybody to get into the picture. We came up with 5 clear goals at the end of the council retreat, and personally, I was really delighted to be so productive with this team and to get that good and important work done, and also to recognize the tremendous amount of work that the city currently has underway. And I think that was universal, that it was very impressive when we visualized the workload of our staff to see the very, very, very many projects that the city is lifting up all simultaneously. And so my hat's off to our entire staff as well for that. I had the great pleasure of traveling to DC for the Victory Institute conference, and then staying on Monday to work at the Capitol. If you read my city newsletter, you see notes from my meeting with Senator Wyden. What I didn't include in that newsletter was that I actually ran into Senator Wyden on the street on Sunday night, and I
was actually going up to compliment, I didn't realize it was Senator Wyden. I saw a woman standing in a gorgeous, gorgeous gown, and somebody in the conference had just said, we don't compliment each other enough. And so I thought, I'm going to tell that stranger that they're wearing a beautiful dress. And as I started to walk in that direction, she turned back and went into the hotel, not having seen me. And so I kept walking, and I said, oh, Senator Wyden, it's so nice to see you. I had the pleasure of then being invited to their staff holiday party at the Capitol the next day. They gave me about an hour with the Chief of Staff, which was really pretty incredible. And not more importantly, but I would be remiss not to mention that the reason she was wearing this gorgeous gown is they were on their way to the Kennedy Center honors. And so after I wished them a wonderful evening that they were sure to have, I realized I should walk over to the Kennedy Center to see all the dressed up people and enjoy, and I happily arrived just about 10 minutes before Queen Latifah. So that was also a real pleasure on the trip. Back to business. Yesterday, Jody Christensen, our special projects manager, Patty Herzog from MEDP, Council President Garvin, and I attended the Oregon Business Summit. And while it's a learning event, it's also a very important networking event. And so we were able to talk to a lot of legislators and let them know that we're supporting Representative Elmer's bill, Housing Oregon's Workforce, and availing ourselves for whatever needs or information they might want. We'll now move to department head reports, and we have a lot of department heads here this evening. We will start where we usually do with our city manager, Jeff Towery.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to echo your comments about the council team building and goal setting. Thank you and all the members of the executive team and a couple of stand-ins that spent Saturday doing, I just think, terrific work on behalf of the body as well as the organization. I really appreciate the intentional and thoughtful way people engaged. It was fun for me, and it says something about my nerd quotient. I thought we were terrifically supported by the consultant teams that worked with us in the morning, the afternoon, and really appreciate the work and look forward to the work to come. I'll also note, I hope I'm not stealing anybody's thunder, but I'm let you know that we have first round interviews for Public Works Director later this week, and more news to report on that recruitment after the first of the year. I will be taking some time off over the next 2 or 3 weeks to enjoy the holidays and some significant family moments over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks. There will be days that I may not respond to you if you reach out to me, particularly the day of the wedding of our son and the subsequent birth of our first grandchild. This is also the last time we'll be together doing public business on behalf of the community for the balance of the calendar year, and I wish you and yours all the peace and joy that this holiday season can bring. Thank you.
Thank you. And City Attorney David Leitenberg.
Thank you. Nothing from the legal department tonight.
Thank you. And even though Mr. Councilor Gary beat me to saying it first in public meeting, Interim Public Works Director James Lofton.
I have nothing to report, but Leland from our wastewater department does.
Wonderful. We'll work our way over to you. Yes. Senior Planner Tom Schauer.
Don't have anything this evening other than to echo what you said already about all the great candidates we had for the committee appointments.
Yes, and thank you so much for all of your time, and thank you also for coming in before 7 a.m. to conduct those interviews. It was very inspirational to hear so many people and to have so many, not just volume of candidates, really, really qualified candidates. It was great. Finance Director Jennifer Cuellar.
Good evening again. I'd like to share that we are zeroing in on the deadline for submitting our fiscal year 2022-23 financial statements on December 31st. And things are moving a little slower than we had hoped at this stage, but we are working furiously, and I believe we will make it. but there may be a little mad scramble. But our auditors are great partners and are willing to work with us throughout the holidays as well to make sure that we meet this deadline. So that's all I have to share tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Wastewater Services Manager Leland Coster?
Okay, I think I have this on. I just want to give you a quick update on our local limits work that we've been doing for our pretreatment program. As part of that, we had to go out for a public comment period that DEQs requires. So in end of October, mid part of November, and at the end of November, we placed ads in the News Register advertising about the updates to our program. And now that that comment period has ended, we'll be sending that information back to DEQ and to the EPA for approval. Once they approve and get it back to us, we'll be then presenting that information to you at a future council meeting with a resolution to adopt the changes to the program. Part of that, the local limits is what our headworks can handle at the treatment facility as far as limits of copper, silver, different heavy metals and whatnot. And then there were a couple updates to the ordinance as far as chapters 4 for definitions. Before, the director of the wastewater program was the community development director. As that role has changed, we changed that to the public works director. And then chapters 7 and 8, which dealt with the defective private sewer lateral program. That was last updated in the early to late 90s, and the requirements are outdated to the point that we needed to increase the amount of time that private citizens had to find a contractor to get on board so that we didn't ding them with penalties before they can even get a contractor to get on record. So we've updated some of that language, and hopefully we'll make it more user-friendly for the citizens.
Great.
In a nutshell.
Thank you. Hold on, one question. Yes, Councilor Gary.
So we met at that stormwater pack about a little over a week ago, in 3/4 of the way through that last gully washer that blew through. And it was just a great time to have that meeting, and you gave just one of those gobsmacking numbers for reference. And I wonder if you could share it here on that normal effluent that we have, and then what it was on that event.
So to put it in simple terms, for the first 6 days of December, we treated about 72 million gallons of water through the treatment facility, and we had just under 6 inches of rain in those 6 days, and we had no overflows.
Well done, yeah.
So the wastewater system is doing its job, and the work that engineering has done in our I&I program is doing a fabulous job. We've even seen our summertime flow numbers are lower than they were in the late 90s, early 2000s. So even though our population has gone up, our influent flow numbers have actually decreased a little.
Great. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Police Chief Scales with Fresh Dew.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Real quickly, a couple things of note. Today, I sat on a roundtable that was convened by Representative Elmer. I'm happy to say, I think, happy or sad, I guess, to say after this roundtable that included obviously members of law enforcement, the DA, HHS, and then obviously city administrators, mayors, et cetera, members of the community, that I think everybody is on the same sheet of music with reference to Measure 110 as far as things that need to be done, reforms that need to be redone to bring back maybe a sense of some normalcy in our communities. So I was happy to be a part of that. I'd be happy to share any thoughts I have with this offline with you if you'd like. But truly sad, but I think there is some momentum that Representative Elmer is going to be taking back to Salem. In addition, as we have continually talked about recruitment, and this is kind of a a cool thing, recruitment efforts at the PD. Obviously it's been very difficult to attract talent our way. Met with Mr. Towery, and he has authorized us, and we've begun the work with a firm out of California to work on specific PD recruitment. Where we're going to be working with this firm that does nothing but recruit a market towards law enforcement at the federal, state, and local levels, and they've had some tremendous success in agencies around us, and I'll be reporting about hopefully some success stories in the coming month or two. But that's some good work. Lastly, I'd like to mention Shop of the Cop is this week, and then we have Adopt a Family for Christmas. We've done a few of those over the years, and we're excited for the Christmas season to be upon us. And lastly, I will say that I'm extremely excited that my daughter comes back from South Carolina from school, so we will be getting her back into the fold this Saturday. That's all I have.
Well, thank you so much. And Public Works Superintendent David Renshaw?
In a well-honored time tradition, I don't ever follow Leland, so nothing from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Director Susan Muir?
I'd like to invite you all to a holiday party at the Senior Center this Friday from 12 to 2. Free program for adults in our community. It'll be a social event with some snacks and treats, and I understand that Santa may be there as well. And then we'll kick off the summer fun or the winter fun programming next week. So looking forward to providing free services for our community over the holidays.
That is wonderful. And I forgot in my council update, but I also had the pleasure of narrating a holiday show at the community center this past Sunday with Second Wind's band that was quite delightful and wonderful to see the community center so filled with friends and family. So it was great. Thank you for hosting that. And City Recorder Claudia Cisneros?
Nothing for the council.
Thank you. And IT Director Scott Burke?
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Nothing for the group tonight, but I will point out that we'll bring in the new year on January 9th, I believe, with a cyber presentation at the exec session. So.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you. And then, while technically these are department reports, we do have the fire district in the house with us here tonight. And if you would like to take the mic, Chief Hannafin, that would be wonderful. We certainly would love to hear what's going on at the fire district.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. I also will keep kind of brief. I think we have a couple topics on your agenda that will cover a bit of our transition phase. We are excited to be in the last few weeks of truly transitioning from working with the city under our previous IGA and transitioning over to our standalone entity as the district. We also are in the midst of holiday season. Our toy program is in full swing. Our fire prevention volunteer, Nancy Law, has been leading that up. She's been helping us out with that for several years. If you've been through the department, you may have seen kind of Christmas exploded within our space there, and we're hoping to help up to about 400 children throughout the community this year. Other than that, we're dwindling down on our vacancies and getting to a space where by the end of the month we'll have 2 firefighter paramedic vacancies and 1 single role paramedic vacancy, which is the lowest that we've seen in quite some time. So very excited about that, along with transition, kind of trying to keep operations going as norm as well, and appreciate all the support.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. Have councilors had an opportunity to review the cash and investment report that was in your packet, both August and September, and anybody have any questions? No? Okay, we are now going to our consent agenda. I would like to remove the reappointments of committee members so we have an opportunity to introduce those committee members. Would any other counselor like to have anything else removed from the consent agenda and heard on its regular place?
One quick change to the consent agenda. Item 8B originally had a different name for the resolution. That was on my error. It's the Fire District IGA that's supposed to be on there. Everything that was included in the packet is the correct item. Just the title on the resolution itself is incorrect.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move forward with the rest of the consent agenda, pulling off 8C, Resolution 2023-70. So I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Councilor Peralta and a second from Councilor Menke. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Consent agenda passes unanimously. Now, if you're in the audience or if you are on Zoom and you're being appointed to a committee, that would be Tracy Haas, Mary Beth Branch, Christopher Knapp, Catherine Hewitt, Carlton Davidson, Eva Ruttinger, Beth Rankin, Dan Tucholsky, and Elena Mudrick. We would love to have you join us and do a brief introduction if you're so willing. It's always nice for the community to know who's serving on their committees, and great also for the council to know the many volunteers that are bringing information forward. Please come on up, and if you just want to say your name, what committee you are on, and if you're so obliged, anything else about yourself that you might be willing to share.
It's so formal, I have to get used to this. Tracy Hawes, Affordable Housing Committee. So this has been great learning experience here, and I'm super excited to get back involved with the city. So enjoying it already and excited to see how we can help everyone in this community, like what I do with my job, and kind of forward this through here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your service.
Hi there, Eva Reudinger. I'm new to the Landscape Review Committee. I have a previous experience with landscaping back in California and over Oregon, and I'm really excited to have some input into some new projects around town. And I'm a stay-at-home mom right now, so I need to use my brain a little more. So
Wonderful.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
Good evening. My name is Carlton Davidson. I'm with the Landscape Review Committee, my second term. I have a degree in horticulture and work for a nursery in Yamhill County. Been there for about 28 years. So trees are my thing. So beautification of the community is what I'm after. So thank you. And Mayor Drepkin, next time you're in Washington, D.C., my son goes to university, George Washington. So make sure you pay him a visit.
I absolutely will. I walked through GW, so Tucholsky. I will say thank you for your service twice. Thank you for your service with the police department, and thank you for your upcoming committee service.
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually on duty tonight. I'm a reserve police officer for the city, as well as a 3-year planning commissioner. Dan Tucholsky, I wanted to say thanks again for the opportunity to serve the city once again in a different capacity for the next 4 years. So thank you for that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy for that. Otherwise, I'm going to take off.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. We greatly appreciate it, and thank you for your service. And then on Zoom, I believe we have Elena Mudrick.
Yep. Yes, good evening. My name is Elena Mudrick. I am currently a small-scale farmer at a winery, and I've lived in McMinnville for nearly 8 years. I'm looking forward to serving as the at-large commissioner for the Planning Commission, and I thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone for being here this evening. I know it was a bit long for us to get to the, we have one more?
Catherine as well.
Oh, Catherine's on Zoom as well. Fantastic. Catherine, if you'd like to unmute and introduce yourself to the council and the community. She might have stopped watching the meeting. I don't know. No, here she comes.
Hi, I'm Catherine Hewitt, newly appointed to the Historic Landmarks Committee. I'm really super excited to be a part of this. I'm a heritage consultant and also work full-time for an engineering firm in large-scale construction. So this will be an interesting, well, it's a kind of a hobby, but profession for me. And thank you very much for the opportunity to serve.
Absolutely. Thank you for your service. Thank you all so much for your service. We greatly appreciate it. We will now get to new business. Whew. Yes, let's do that for sure. Thank you, Counselor. I would now entertain a motion
regarding resolution number 2023-70, a resolution appointing and reappointing members to the city's various boards, committees, and commissions.
So moved.
Moved.
I have a
Second.
motion from Counselor Chenoweth, a second from Counselor Payne. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. And I got the memo. It's time to put on my fast voice, so here we go. We now have a McMinnville Water and Light Commission appointment. I would like to make a recommendation for the reappointment of Jody Christensen for another 4-year term with a term expiration of December 31st, 2027. Does any counselor have any questions they would like to discuss? Counselor Geary.
How many applicants did we have for the position, and what was the recruitment process like?
The Water and Light Commission stands alone, called out in our charter. It's not, the process is different than all other committees and commissions. So McMinnville Water and Light Commissioners come at a recommendation by the mayor for approval by the council.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions?
I move that we accept Jody as a candidate.
Second.
I have a motion from Counselor Menke and a second from Counselor Payne. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. And the reappointment has passed unanimously. And we thank Ms. Christensen for her service as well as with her everyday role with the City of McMinnville as our Special Projects Coordinator. We'll now move into resolutions. Considering resolution number 2023-64, a resolution awarding the contract for park and open space unarmed security services to NAS Security Services LLC. I'd like to call on David Renshaw, Public Works Superintendent, to present.
Thank you, Your Honor, Mayor and councilors. I would call your attention to our staff report in your packet. And this is a contractual agreement that we're looking to develop to continue our park security program that started last spring. We went through an RFP process, selected a contractor, happened to be the same person or same firm we're working with today. And while I'm sad we have to do this, it's really been a very effective program, worked very well for us, and it's definitely increased and improved the safety conditions we've seen in our park system. So with that, I'd take any questions y'all might have.
Thank you. Does any counselor have any question or discussion? Not seeing any, I would ask for a motion to approve the resolution.
Excuse me, Mayor, if I may, for just a moment.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
You should have among your packet a minor amendment to the contract included with this one. I just wanted to call it to your attention because it did come late. All it is changing the moment of negotiation for the pricing of the terms as they move forward. Again, very slight change, and you should have it among your amended packet.
Thank you. The counselors want an opportunity to review. There's a printout as well. You can see 3.2. It's highlighted in blue. The words "the anniversary of the effective date" are crossed out and replaced with "the commencement of any of the additional one-year terms." Thank you so much for that. I would now call for a motion to approve resolution number 2023-64.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Counselor Menke and a second by Counselor Chenoweth. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. And the resolution has passed unanimously. We'll now consider resolution number 2023-66, a resolution adopting a supplemental budget amendment for fiscal year 2023-24 in the Affordable Housing Fund. I'd like to call on Jennifer Cuellar, our Finance Director, to present.
So this resolution is associated with what was described leading up to the public hearing on this subject. So again, if folks have any additional questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. Any additional discussion or questions at this time? Not seeing any, I would ask for a motion to approve resolution number 2023-66.
So moved.
And a second. I have a motion from Counselor Peralta and a second from Counselor Menke. All those in, is there any additional discussion at this point? Hearing any, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. and the resolution is passed unanimously. We'll now consider resolution number 2023-67, a resolution adopting a fiscal year 2023-24 contingency transfer in the general fund and a budget amendment for the Fire District Transition Fund and General Fund. I'll now again call on Jennifer Cuellar, Finance Director, to present.
Good evening. So this budget amendment addresses a financial planning issue that we missed in the transition when, so statute asks that when employees from one public agency move to another public agency, that the value of leave, accumulated leave for those employers be paid from the agency that's losing the employees to the agency that's gaining the employees. So in this case, that's approximately $400,000 worth of unused leave time. So what this amendment does is there also was a one-time program from the city where the members of the bargaining unit, as well as general staff of the fire department, were offered the opportunity to cash in some of their excess vacation leave. And so the approximate total of that value was $50,000. So that was not budgeted in the fire district transition budget. So this amendment appropriates $50,000 of that $400 to the fire district budget, and then the remaining $350,000 is a contingency transfer out of the general fund to be able to make that payment when the transition is being finalized. So if folks have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions from council? Not seeing any, I would ask for a motion to approve resolution number 2023-67.
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilor Payne.
Second.
And a second from Councilor Menke. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed say nay. And the resolution passes unanimously. We'll now consider resolution number 2023-68, a resolution approving and authorizing execution of the intergovernmental agreement for the transfer of assets, obligations, and liabilities to the McMinnville Fire District. And I'd like to call on Walt Gowell, former interim city attorney, to present.
Mayor, while Mr. Gowell is approaching, I would just suggest interim city attorney emeritus.
And much better. We can put that underneath his name on his plaque.
Special counsel.
Special counsel.
Mayor and members of the council, it's a privilege to be back once again before you. This resolution is the culmination of the council's work over the last several years and authorizes the transfer of substantially all of the fire department assets and related leases and equipment, personal property, vehicles, including the real property interest of the fire station. It includes a 99-year lease on the training tower site, subject to the city's ability to terminate it on 2 fiscal years notice if the city requires the use of that property for a mandated state or federal or master plan activity in the sewage department. It involves a transfer of employees, as was discussed with your last resolution. It involves the payment of funds to the district in relation to the transfer of those employees and the statutory transfer of accrued sick leave, vacation time. It also transfers to the district the city's interest in GEMT funding that relates to fire department receivables that will be coming in additional satisfaction of the statutory obligation for transfer of employees and their sick leave rights that have been accrued. The nature of the assets being transferred is specified in sections A through R of the intergovernmental agreement that you have before you. In Section 2, the agreement relates to assumption of liabilities by the district. These include significant liabilities such as a pro rata portion of the obligation the city owes to Western Bank, I believe it is, relating to the PERS buy-down note that the city undertook in approximately 2013. The fire department employees represent a portion of that PERS pension buy-down note, and the district will be paying pro rata based on a percentage of the number of employees as it relates to that note. Additionally, there is a fire equipment note that relates to rolling stock equipment and fire engines that is being assumed by the district. There is a requirement in the IGA that the district promptly undertake and complete prior to June a refinance of approximately $500,000 payment that will be due in next June for the payment of the final payment on that note, and an indemnification of the city by the district for performance of that obligation. There are cooperation clauses in this agreement. There are mutual indemnification clauses. There is a reservation by the city of the right to use, in cooperation with the city, the county, WICOM, the sheriff's department, the cell tower that is located at the fire department, and so the city is reserving an easement for the use, operation, and joint maintenance of that facility that is needed by the police department for its communications purposes. There is an assignment of leases relating to that Verizon cell tower between the city and the district. There is also an assignment of the lease of the substation property located on Baker Creek Road, I believe it is, which that substation property will be taken over by the district. There is a provision for transfer of records, public records, from the city to the district that relate to the fire department and the emergency services records that the city has maintained over the years. It does provide that the city has the right to make copies of any of those records for the next 10 years should it need them for whatever purposes might be appropriate, either audit or defense or whatever might come up. There's a cooperation regarding third-party contracts. There is an assignment of contracts that relate to equipment. So if there's a lease of some equipment at the fire department that's with the city, that there's a cooperation clause to assure the cooperation to transfer those agreements to the district. There is a dispute resolution provision that says that the jurisdictions will make good faith efforts to informally resolve any dispute relating to the agreement. If it's not resolved informally, it'll be exclusively settled by binding arbitration between the district and the city using for that purpose, we would probably the city would resort, and the district would resort to the Circuit Court of Yamhill County for the appointment of an appropriate arbitrator. There is a cooperation clause with regard to the fire district review and feedback to the city for any future urban renewal district that the city may wish to propose or undertake. And I think that's about it of significance. There's some reimbursement by the city to the district for some lost tax revenue that was requested by the district and was inserted into the agreement based upon discussions between the leadership at the city and the fire district. And other than that, I think I would stop there and take questions.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Gowell?
I have a
Councilor
couple.
Chenoweth.
So these are curiosity questions.
Yes.
Not make or break questions. Did the city get a first right refusal on the property?
No. However, there is a statutory requirement that if the property is transferred within 20 years, that it must the city must have, it must be returned to the city under the statutory provision relating for transferring real property from one entity to another entity. The city council had previously instructed not to have any kind of hook on the property, but to leave that, to not do that, so the agreement specifically does not have that, but the statute does require that it be used for that public purpose for 20 years.
Okay, and then the second question is, in the last year, we got a payment from, I think it was from the state, offsetting underpayment, basically, for Medicare reimbursement. And maybe I'm getting this exactly where it came from, but it was about $1 million that came in for previous years. How does any future funds that are paying for past years get allocated?
The GEMT funds that are programmed to come in for the 23-24 year or are scheduled to be received during that year are transferred. Earlier years, which may not have come in yet, are not transferred under this agreement. For instance, 21-22 fiscal year funds that may not have yet been received.
They would stay with the city.
Now, one other category of funds, which are accounts receivable for non-GMT accounts receivable, are being transferred so there is a small amount of funds that comes in each year that's currently with collection account companies that relate to older services that is being transferred to the district as part of this agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional council questions or comments?
Mayor, before we move on, I do want to state for the record that the council received an updated version that Walt referenced, and it will be made public to the record on the amended packet.
Thank you very much. I would now entertain a motion to approve resolution number 2023-68.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Geary and a second from Councilor Chenoweth. All those, is there any additional council discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. And the resolution passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the chance to come back before you.
Yes, thank you, sir. We'll now consider the second reading of ordinance number 5141, and I would call on Senior Planner Tom Schauer to present and introduce Bill Kabizman, our special legal counsel.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the second reading of this ordinance was scheduled on your agenda for this evening. We had some correspondence from staff at the Department of Land Conservation Development last week regarding a sequencing issue in terms of request to the resolution passed by council at your, I believe it was the November 28th meeting, to request sequential review of the housing needs analysis through a UGB amendment process. And so we did have a chance to meet with DLCD staff, and there's a December 12th letter that we received from them that was distributed, I believe, this evening. And I'll turn it over to Bill Kabizman to kind of summarize the issues and the next steps in that.
Thank you, Tom, and another special counsel for you tonight. As Tom said, there was a second reading scheduled this evening. And if you may recall, back early in November, you adopted a resolution electing to pursue a sequential review of the UGB, where each step is reviewed separately. Unfortunately, that sequential review hasn't been formally adopted by DLCD at this point. And if we were to adopt this final second reading of the HNA EOA, it could cause problems later with the sequential review because it's out of sync with it. So in discussions with the LCD, we thought the best approach that we came up with is a delay in adopting this HNA and EOA for a short while until we get that formal approval of the sequential review. And DLCD affirmed the two things to keep in mind. As Tom indicated, there is a letter from DLCD staff that came out. You may recall that under ORS 197296, Community Development Director Richards indicated that we needed to have the H&A adopted by the end of this year. And we've noted that when our discussions with DLCD, and that's what the letter does, is it extends out the time for H&A. You'll note also that the letter extends it to December 31st, 2024. That was not our desire to have such a lengthy extension. That is driven by the administrative rules that require a deadline of December 31st, 2024, I believe. And so the second point I want to make is that the intent is once the formal sequential UGB process is approved, that second reading will come back to you relatively quickly, and then the city will continue to forge ahead with the rest of the UGB process as planned.
Thank you. So, and I'm just going to clarify for the record that the information we received from Community Development Director Richards was correct, including her timing was correct. However, it was DLCD that highlighted a sequencing, kind of a nuanced sequencing error, and so DLCD has written us and given us an extension, and so that we do not have to move on this this evening, and there will be no harm to the city for not meeting the deadline that they gave us because they have extended the deadline. Correct. Great. Any additional? Yes.
Further clarification, we've asked that they complete that approval as quickly as possible. And in the draft work program that was approved as part of the resolution 2023-63, that had our essentially our proposed work program and timelines, and there are later tasks that are still dependent on expeditious review of those work products and grants that have some associated deadlines. So we are looking to continue to move this as quickly as possible to meet our deadlines once that work program is approved.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Actually, we're not doing any questions because we're not really entertaining this. So I will now adjourn the city council meeting at 9:05 p.m. The city will now go into the conference room for a close to the public special called executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions.